Hi, everybody. Oh, my goodness.
Hello.
We have lots and lots of guests. So, everybody, if you are just joining, this is Mother Della Mort with Odd Daughter for the Horror Gallery. I can't speak this evening. And we have two special guests. We have our very own Miss Dell and our very own Razzle Dazzle Tish Slasher. Woo!
My brother.
So we are so glad. So yeah, everybody come on in, get comfortable, send out all your shares and all that kind of stuff. But I thought tonight would be fun since we're going to be talking about the father of cosmic horror himself, H.P. Lovecraft, him being a speculative author himself, that we would have two speculative authors on as well. How are you guys doing tonight?
Fantastic. Now that I'm here.
Great. Yeah, forgive the little extra noise over here. I was just setting up, and I was gonna light a candle, then I realized that I didn't have a wax melt in hand, so I'm lighting an incense thing, so I had to like dig out my incense. So sorry for the noise. This is a really good microphone, and it picks up everything.
Well, how are you doing today, daughter? I haven't had you on for a little while. Forever. And she got so upset because she heard that I was going to be covering H.P. Lovecraft, and she was like, "What, without me?" So yeah.
That's awesome. I love it when you're here. You're amazing. The last time, other than D&D, which we're hopefully getting back to a week from this Monday, the one before that, I know Krampus. We all got together and did the Krampus thing together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. So let me go over to the comments real quick. See who all we've got here.
This is a very controversial subject. For those of you that don't know at home, there's a lot of themes of racism in the work of Lovecraft, and it sparked worldwide debates. I'll talk a little bit more about that from my end a little later, but this may be a subject that's kind of a little bit hard for a lot of people to talk about. And you wouldn't think it is.
And it may be. It really may be. And that's one of the reasons why, I know that we talked about the King in Yellow and, a couple of weeks back. And from at least what the numbers look like, people really enjoyed that, even though I tell you what, that feed was so full of gremlins. I can't even begin to tell you all the problems that we had, but it was a lot of fun.
I watched that one. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, but it was a trash fire. But I guess when you talk about the King in Yellow, I guess that is just apt to happen. So let's hope it doesn't happen tonight. But that's one of the reasons why I wanted to actually talk about H.P. Lovecraft himself, because, and again, this is just my personal feeling. I know that everybody has their own take on it, but in order to, maybe scholar is not the right word, but anytime that I think you're looking, whether it be history or classic authors and artists and things like that, you have to add it with a bit of context of the time. And not that it's excusable,
right.
But the man's life was a trash fire. And I honestly believe he was so scared of everything that anything that came across as different or alien, or in any way not of what he knew, he approached it with a type of ignorance, and so I think in a lot of ways you have to take it in context. You have to separate the man from really the works that he did.
And that's
a definite.
People. Yeah, it's difficult because it's not just Lovecraft. Marilyn Manson, there's a lot that's still going on with him. Johnny Depp, Amber Heard. And those are just like the more modern examples of what we're discussing as far as in terms of Lovecraft. That's Lovecraft debate's an age-old one, but these are more modern ones. But even Creepers, Victor DeSalva and all that stuff. It's hard.
Yeah, I've had one of my exes and I bonded over Lovecraft. It was it wasn't the only thing that got us together, but it was one of the things that kept us together for a while. Was we both had similar interests and it was something to talk about. And as his daughter got older, when she hit about her 20s, she had posted something late teens, early 20s. She had posted something about the irony behind or how how Lovecraft was saying certain things ironically. And I had to
Mhm.
go on and correct her and be like, no, he was a real severe racist and bigot, like one of the worst of his time
Yeah.
in certain categories. So he like, this is where you get to choose, honey. You've been a fan of his for a long time. So can you separate the author and the art, or are you not going to be able to do that? Because he was a
Mhm.
hell of a writer, but he was not a good he changed a bit towards the end, but he was never somebody that was gonna make it with like the cancel culture that we have today.
Oh no, he would not
No,
have.
not at all. And you know, that's the
Just
thing is that, you know, and I know we'll get into this more, but it's just I find it I find it I don't even know if interesting, just ironic maybe, that
I think it is
like
interesting.
his marriage, she was Jewish, you know, so
Yeah.
it was just, I don't know. Again, everything that I have read about him, he just had, he was, I think his mother had a lot to do with it, just instilled him with fear of everything.
yeah, he didn't have a good upbringing.
No, not at all. Not at all. And we'll get into that too. Um, but it looks like we've got somebody here. Let's see who we got. Susan Lewis. And Susan writes, I'm about blind. It says, hello, hello. How's everybody? We are good, Susan. Glad you're here. Please share, share, share. That is the best way that you can support your artists, and it's absolutely free. So,
Before we get into too much
mhm.
Lovecraft stuff, though, I wanted to, and for those of you who are just joining us, you know that we've, you two in particular have been setting up everything in our new satellite office in Pickwich, Ohio,
Yep.
and I got a really weird message from Pickwich, Ohio, guys.
Really?
Yeah, I've loaded this up, and this just showed up in my mailbox. Uh, no address, a return address, or anything on it. And for those of you who don't know, when I'm on here, this is Delphine. I am a crow, but the person whose body I'm hosting is the person who has my actual address. And
Well, you
so
know, they are old school. So, you know, with us being a business in that town, we've probably gone into that registry. So,
I'm here right now, just so you guys
yeah,
know. Anytime I'm broadcasting now, I found a way quicker way to get there. It's like maybe 31, 32 minutes now. I've got it down from where I live now anyway. So
well, that's why you're running late.
oh,
yeah. I'm just
okay,
going to the broadcast. I figure we have an office, and
yeah.
honestly, the basements in Ohio pretty much look mostly the same anyhow. So
Okay, well,
I just
I'm gonna have you look this guy up because okay, this is the letter that I got. That's
Oh,
all it
wow.
was in my post office. It's freaking sealed in with a wax seal in the back.
what the
Well, at
hell?
least they have style.
Yeah, I posted up on a box that I'd gotten in the same thing, and then but the handwriting is so horrible, and some of the wax pulled stuff up. So I wrote it down because like there's no way you could read that if I tried to
I
show
no
you.
way. Yeah.
He like really G's and Y's were really long, elongated and then just written through and stuff.
Roller
Hmm.
coaster, dude.
Yeah, it wasn't like used with a fountain pen or anything good, but so this is the message that I got. Greetings and salutations, Delphine Galdrakraka. It has come to my attention that your merry band of psycho bunnies have recently opened a satellite station in our lovely little town. I wish you all the very best in your endeavor and would like to let you know that I embrace the bunnies wholeheartedly. However, there is one problem that we will need to address, and please do forgive me for this. I'm afraid that it might be unwise for you in particular to visit our friendly little gosh darn town. As you are a crow, a harbinger, your presence is likely to cause unrest with some of our older community members. Should you attempt to simply send in your host vessel on her own, she may find herself more susceptible to being taken over by things that we try to keep sleeping. Please know that I only have your best interests at heart. You might receive communications from others as well, some who aren't looking out for your best interests or those of our beloved township. I implore you to listen well to my warning if this happens, as again, I only have the best interests of you and Pickwich. The only time he capitalizes and makes it huge is in Pickwich, in my
Mhm.
heart. Please assure your fellow cultists that we embrace the new business you are bringing to our community and all of the new tourism and upgrades to our town that your presence offers us through your advertising and appearance here. And it's signed Garrett Martins the Fourth. And it's Gerrit Martens, I guess it might be. It's like Martense the Fourth.
I don't remember
So,
meeting anybody like that. That just gives me the shivel bump.
yeah, I have no idea because I didn't know that my name would be included and stuff, or how they got it that quickly to where, I mean, I guess if they watched enough videos, they might have been able to put where I was at, but to my mailbox.
They don't really have much technology. Hold on. Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. Yeah, they don't have much technology. Sorry, there are going to be people come from town that just, I guess I've just been hanging out at the studio outside. So
Okay.
I let them in because they wanted to work on some things. Oh my God, what's her
Okay.
name? Candy that we met. What's her name? Her full name. Anyway, she told me to call her Candy, Kandar, something like that.
Okay.
I let her in because she is showing the maintenance guy the pipe issue that we had down here in the basement.
Oh, okay. With the real estate
Leak in the back-
company?
Yeah. The leak in the back
Okay.
left corner.
Okay.
They're working on that right now, and yeah, cool people.
Okay.
It's like every time I'm here, though, someone needs to come and work on something. So I've just been letting people in, and
Okay, well, I'll send you the spelled out name for the guy. But if while you're there, if you leave a note for somebody or find out, because I'm kind of like, okay, thank you for the warning. I'm glad you like us. How did you get a hold of my information
that's weird.
and get thing at my house? And
Oh,
are
no, I
they
need
one
to go
of
check my P.O. box out.
like, okay, should I be looking for? And they said that other people might try to contact me too. And then I'm just like, what have you guys gotten me into? I live all the way out here. I'm not even going to say it. No,
Well,
they're watching.
I mean, they, we just thought we were having friendly conversation with them. I mean, we told them about everybody, but
I didn't give
that
addresses
was
or nothing like that. We didn't give out addresses. I mean,
no, we didn't give out address.
this is like my third time here now, officially by myself. The first time I didn't third time here by myself. I just had Michelle just drop me off, pick me up later because she had shit to do. Usually does.
Uh-huh.
So I mean, I haven't had any weird problems, or I mean, I'm not gonna notice if something's weird for the most part because I'm just used to that shit. So to be fair, but there's
I am
something weird that I
not
didn't.
here.
I noticed something weird down here that wasn't here before. Let me see if we can see it. I don't know if we'll be able to see it or not. That is a giant stack of fucking doors, white painted doors over there. It's just a stack of doors, like a whole stack of them, and I don't know why or where they're from because they're not from this building. And Candy said she didn't know where they were from, but it's just a giant.
And they weren't there the last time.
No, I got here today. Well, no, last time I was down here, I noticed one door, and I kind of tried to show it on camera a little bit, but you couldn't see it that well. But now I can move this a little bit easier now. But I'm trying to get some better technology up in here. Oh, without breaking it, because apparently I'm shoving it off the table now.
I don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, now you can see them. Now it's gone from one door to like 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 doors and six like white doors with like locks and padlocks and knobs and 2 screen doors. That's what's here now. She has no idea how they got here, and maintenance doesn't know how they got here. And they were here, like I said, Sunday was the last time I was here, and they weren't here. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
Don't open the doors.
Don't open the
Even if they're
doors,
laying on each
no.
other. Don't open them.
Some of them are actually in the frames and everything, just leaning against the wall. Most of them, like 2 of them have frames. So this is like a Monsters Inc. scenario where if I open them,
This is gonna
it's weird. I don't know.
One of them opens to my mailbox. That's what's going on. It's like just infested.
They just opened the door and threw the letter in.
What was the name of that? It was like a romance movie called like The Cabin or something, where someone was passing like love notes or something over different time periods, like through a mailbox at a cabin. It's some weird,
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
remember the name of
I
that.
think it's like a
But the
romance,
lake or something like
Lake
that.
House or something. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
one of those things. Yeah, so it kind of reminds me, but the creepy version where they open it and they just reach their hand in and it's Bell's mailbox. I'm gonna open them later and see what happens. I just want to know what's in there.
Then you better be careful. You better be careful.
I've already
You're
looked
gonna
into
get yourself
my
lost
life
from the
and-
building.
Oh, I'll find my way. It's cool, man.
I'm curious about how the dress
I'll
up people are gonna react to this though. Like they're the supernatural folks in my face. So it's like you just are they gonna like hunt them down or hide my mail? I hope they don't hide it. I should put it somewhere. But
I don't know.
yeah.
It's too bad you don't have like a medium friend or something that see if they could get some vibes or something off
I
that letter.
do. I
Well,
have
I
like
could
a dozen.
myself.
Oh yeah.
I mean, basically, but there's nothing super weird about it other than how it showed up. And I like my mailbox is one of those big ones that has a couple apartment buildings worth. It's out by the street. So there's no way to like get it in unless they were there when like the post office person was doing it, and they wouldn't let them just stick a letter in a box, you know?
Yeah, normally they won't let you do that.
Unless they really believe in themselves, you know, and then that's a whole other story.
Yeah, maybe they paid off my mailman.
I don't know how,
on that note.
So anyway, sorry to bring that up. I just like
well,
you
actually,
two are the
that
ones
was a
who know
great
everything. So I'm
segue.
like,
Oh, and that was my cat. One of my cats that I brought here with me, just because HPL is his name. It's Howard Philip Lovecraft. That's who I named him after. Like when we got him 4 years ago. But I brought him with me today because he likes to wander around. He's real inquisitive, so I figured I'd get him out of their hair for a while.
Don't let him open them doors neither.
Oh, I love HPL. But
you know, a cat just has to go and stare at one, and it'll open.
See, okay, he's my dumb cat. Like I have 2 cats. Crowley is at home. Crowley's actual part. His mother was a feral cat, but his father was some kind of wild, like straight wild cat, and you can tell in his build. He doesn't know how to purr. He only knows how to trill, and he hunts like and attacks. He's a sweetheart.
I love a cat's trill.
He's my protector cat, but he's also really nervous and doesn't like car rides, and he gets like really upset and he'll get sick. But HPL is also inquisitive, and he's more of my alert because he kind of talks and like meows a lot. So if something weird's going on, he'll be scared of it, so he'll come let me know. So I figured he'd be the better one to bring with me today.
He's like, hey, it's time to run.
Yeah. I'll just take his fat ass in my arm and go trucking.
Well, that's what I was saying. On those notes, so tonight what we're going to start off with is cosmic horror. So, and it's also known, or better known, as Lovecraftian horror. Now, sometimes used interchangeably, it's a subgenre of horror fiction and weird fiction that emphasizes the horror of the unknowable and incomprehensible more than gore or other elements of shock, which kind of pertains to what we've been going through with Pickwick. Now, it does emphasize themes of cosmic dread, forbidden and dangerous knowledge, madness, non-human influences on humanity, religion and superstition, fate and inevitability, and the risk associated with scientific discovery. Now, the thing that I heard, which really made a lot of sense, how do you compare what we think of as traditional horror with cosmic horror? Well, the way that it was explained, which I thought was great, was that with traditional horror, you have like an antagonist, okay? And the best way to overcome something is to understand it and know more about it. That's how you fight Dracula, fight the werewolf. That's how you get away from ghosts and demons and things like that, is you are to better understand them so that you can learn more and overcome the problem. Whereas with cosmic horror, the existential dread of being insignificant in the scope of all things, in unfathomable universes filled with vast and dangerous powers, basically, you ain't shit.
Yep. Yeah, the actual, usually the encounters with, even if it's not the being itself, just the like they're one of the famous, well, it's the music of, I just totally forgot his name, Zan, something Zan, but he's in that story. It's a rather short story. It's
about the violin.
Yeah,
he
plays violin. Eric Zan, the music of Eric Zan. And every time that he's playing this music, the person who's writing the story is like, "Oh, it's so incredible and wild." And he goes up and asks if he can hear it play, and he's playing back to cover up music that's coming from another being and invading the universe. And the creatures and their abilities are so overwhelming to the human mind, so foreign that we cannot accept them. Like ghosts, vampires, they're somewhat human creatures. A
Right.
werewolf it's something we can understand. It's an addition of this and this, but you have your human, you have your wolf. Okay, they go together. But when it comes to a lot of the cosmic horror, it's things that are so foreign from your brain that you go mad just looking at them. You can't comprehend how something can exist that is that different from us,
Right.
and has that much power.
And it really goes back to the less you know, the better off you are.
Yeah. The people who start learning then get stuck into studying and learning more until eventually a lot of them end up in insane asylums and such.
Right.
Or
No,
just
I absolutely agree. That's a great story, guys. If you guys haven't read that one, it's a really good story. And I get tickled because, like, when I read some of Lovecraft stuff, like, I guess maybe to today's standards, I mean, his stuff is good. Don't get me wrong, and his what he created and what he started. Um, like I couldn't imagine not having cosmic horror. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
But it's a little dry in today's comparison. But it's really, really good. But I always get so tickled because his like go-tos are like, it was unknowable, undescribable,
Unfathomable.
unfathomable.
everybody is mostly probably familiar with recently came out The Color Out of Space.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be a color that isn't on our spectrum. And obviously the movie producer, I didn't watch it because I hate Nicolas Cage, but
It was a great movie. Beautiful.
It's actually really good. It was disturbing. I could only get about halfway through it just because it involves kids. I can't do kids stuff very much.
that having things that aren't on our spectrum is like that. As a producer, you can't make that because you're obviously limited to what we have. But yes, very much.
Well, and that's the reason people say, well, why isn't there a lot of Lovecraftian movies, like that are based on some of Lovecraft stories, and that's pretty much it. It's very hard to take and put that on film. Now, I do think that Guillermo del Toro did very, very good in the Cabinet of Curiosities as far as some of the directors and things like that, especially Hickman's model. Hickman's model was my favorite.
There's a reason behind this. It's because Guillermo del Toro has been trying to get the first true epic length horror film ever made of Mountains of Madness, which is one of Lovecraft's most amazing things, which is also a small part of what inspired The Thing.
Right.
A small part. Well, it inspired the book that inspired making The Thing.
Right.
But he's been trying to get this for years. He joined up with the biggest purveyor of everything artifact related to Lovecraft throughout history, which, believe it or not, is Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is the biggest collector of H.P. Lovecraft memorabilia in the known world. This is a
Pepper and I have synchronized. What?
Yeah, and him and Tom have been trying to get Mountains of Madness made for a real, like, I'm talking like at least a decade and a half at least. And every year he makes a comment about it. They make a comment about it. It's to the point where him and Tom have talked about just making the entire thing with their own money. But there's a big risk.
I tell you, that would be the director to do it, personally.
He can do anything, and like I know Tom Cruise is a crazy guy, but I mean maybe that's because he's a big Lovecraft fan. If you really think about his life and the weird he's done. And if you spend your whole life dedicated to Lovecraft and collecting everything that he's ever touched and been a part of, that might drive you crazy after a while.
I think my favorite one, and I didn't see The Color Out of Space, but my favorite Lovecraftian movie, there's two of them. The big one is In the Mouth of Madness with Sam Neill, and it's the Have You Read Sutter Kane? And they go on this trip to a town that they can't find. It's kind of similar to Pictwitch, actually.
I was going to say, that's bringing back some like deja vu there.
I agree.
But it reminds me when I think of that now.
That's one of the best Lovecraftian-based movies that I've ever seen in my life. Probably is in Mouth of Madness. It's one of my top favorite films of all time.
And the way that he makes it so that so that the horror is there but not seen. You see a lot of the effects that it has on people, but when it
Right.
comes to the actual monster, you don't see it all the way. You see it fighting and things struggling to get through and break through into our reality, but you don't actually get to see the monster. Like they use the Necronomicon way back in the old Evil Dead movies. And what do you see in there? You see the forest reacting, you see the people reacting, and then you see from the monster's perspective the camera rushing at people. And that was really well done too, I think.
With the camera mounted to the John Deere tractor, yes.
Just
How they did those shots in the woods. Because if you look
it's
in the
just
early
awesome
movies,
though.
you can see the
I
edge of the
like
tractor
those
knocking on the
kind.
trees.
I think that's the reason I'm like so drawn to gothic horror is because like I know a lot of our supporters and stuff out there like the like war porn and all that kind of stuff, you know, as far as just like gore
Like
in your face,
Saw and other weird things.
Saw and Hostel and things like that. But I like the implied. To me, the implied can be so much more personal and scarier to each individual because you're going to come up in your mind with what that is because it's unimaginable, unexplainable,
Undescribable.
Unnameable.
Ineffable. Let's see who can do the best.
That's another fun series of old 80s horror films that we were just talking about on Sunday, The Unnameable. That's those were also based on the works of Lovecraft.
Yep,
But
the Unnameable, Reanimator, From Beyond, which I love those.
I love those, like especially the entire all three Reanimator movies, and they've been officially talking about, and they've already announced it. Actually, the complete remake of the Reanimator series is coming out.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh, nice.
Herbert West is oh my god, Jeffrey. I know his name. I've met him so many times. He also was the FBI agent that used to live with the Manson family in Frighteners. Like his character in Frighteners was super awesome. But like Jeffrey Combs, that's his name. Like he played Herbert West. Like and oh my, his portrayal of Herbert West in those movies, and they were schlocky and cheesy, but they were. There's nothing like him.
Well, he's got that creep factor to him. I mean, I think he's a great actor.
He's got that
he
presence in
does
real
have
life.
that creepy feel to him. That I think that's the reason. Like to me, they became such cult classics. Like
oh yeah, and you've got some really good comedy derivatives, like some amazing ones. There's the Relic of Cthulhu, the Last Lovecraft, which is he's the final living descendant of of Howard I'll just say H.P. Lovecraft because I say his full name all the time. But he's the last living relative of Lovecraft, and it's up to him to stop General Starspawn from coming and taking over our universe from Cthulhu. It's a comedy horror. It's amazing. But probably my favorite adjacent, like, comedy sort of level is the John Dies at the End novel series and movie is also heavily, heavily based on Lovecraft. But it's like really hilarious, weird, bizarro comedy horror.
I want to say I saw that, and it was like it was really good. Like I bypassed it, I don't know how many times thinking, and then one night I watched it and I was like, holy crap.
Now, there's so much left out of the movie that it's almost a little bit nonsensical and doesn't wrap around as nicely as it should. But it has Clancy Brown in it, dude. Like one of the greatest horror actors ever who happens to be an Ohio native. It's made by Don Cascarelli, who made Phantasm. Hell, Angus Scrimm himself, the tall man, before he died, has an appearance as a priest in that movie. So like it's like a who's who of like indie horror that's in it. But the book series, honestly, I don't know how many times I've referred to this series during my my thesis projects in school because as a writer, the dude, he comes from Cracked Magazine of all things, and he started it as a blog that people started printing off and passing out, and got a book deal, and then a movie deal, and now there's 3 books in the series.
He was one of my favorite Cracked authors, yeah. And the other movie I was going to refer to was Cast a Deadly Spell, which is kind of schlock. I don't know if you'd necessarily consider it a B movie, but it wasn't very out there. But it's a private eye film. It was from 1991. It stars Fred Ward, Julianne Moore, Clancy Brown.
Clancy.
Yep, Clancy's all over it. A couple other folks, but it's in this place where like zombies are used for labor. Everybody uses magic, and then there's this detective noir story going on behind the scenes with like the Necronomicon and stuff involved. And I just watch it. I'm not going to spoil the whole movie. The whole movie is just great because it's this absolute Lovecraftian setting written in a totally different style than anything Lovecraft ever wrote.
Well, and
It,
that's what I was just kind of sitting here thinking is that, you know, and like I said, I know I'm going to get into like his life and just kind of how screwed up it was, but if it wasn't for, and I know that he was inspired by a lot of people, you know, and things like that,
Mhm.
but I mean, you can trace things. I don't think we would have all of these like Alien, what the movie Alien, at least the first one was really kind of inspired by cosmic horror and H.P. Lovecraft. I mean, you've got so much that
oh,
has
H.R.
those
Geiger was
elements
for
in it.
sure.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah, oh yeah. Because I was sitting here when you were talking about the book series, whereas I was thinking that made me think of Odd Thomas and
Oh, yeah.
the book series of Odd Thomas. But even that
I
kind of,
love
in
those books.
some ways, is to me kind of got elements of that.
Well,
The whole
Lovecraft is
like
directly
Aryan,
referenced several times in
yeah,
that series. Yeah.
parallel, you know, like dimensions existing within the same dimension, blah 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 blah. You know.
I know Dell and I share a favorite author who has done many interviews and has many discussions based on his inspiration of Lovecraft, and that'd be Clive Barker. He's
Mhm.
heavily inspired. Stephen King also many interviews heavily inspired by Lovecraft. But what a lot of
What
people
about
don't realize. Go ahead.
Ramsey Campbell, the most prolific horror author alive right now?
I was about to
Hi,
get to that one
Ramsey.
next. Yep. Yep, and of course Ramsey, and me and Dell have done a lot with a lot of other people. You know, Steve Van Tim. We had him on the other day too. You know, we were just talking to him on Sunday. Like
Mhm.
he's big into Lovecraft. But what a lot of people forget about is all these people talk about Lovecraft was my influence. Lovecraft was my influence. But I also like Poe. A lot of people that don't really know about Lovecraft's life don't realize that his biggest inspiration was Poe. And in many
Very much
interviews,
so.
he did a shit ton of essays where he directly refers to Poe as his personal god of fiction, and when he writes stories, Poe is his model. That's actually he tried so hard to model elements of his life and his personal life even after Poe, and you can see the similarities, but except for Lovecraft was crazy and he did it on purpose
Right.
to emulate Poe as a human being, but failed miserably because Poe had a very miserable life by happenstance and bad choices and severe opium addiction and alcohol and other things. So Lovecraft thought, well, I have to live my life in order to reach that level of greatness, which really explains a lot about Lovecraft, who and why he was such a trash fryer of a human being, if you really think about it.
Well, and like one of my favorites that I just recently found because I am not a Lovecraft aficionado by any means. I like him. I like what he has birthed as far as what we have now, and I like a lot of there's certain stories like Hickman's Model. That's one of my favorites.
It's a great
And
one.
I just recently came across White Ship, which was some of his earlier work before he really started getting into the whole like Cthulhu mythos and all that kind of stuff. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that time in his life, because he was really big on like uh, Greek mythology
Yes.
and Roman mythology and things like that. And it seemed to me when I heard it, and to me it was more like a poem, maybe sort of. Um, I think it's really a short story, but uh, was kind of like a Poe. If you were to take Poe and like the Greek or Roman pantheons, and they had a baby, it's just
Yeah.
it's got the feel of the Lighthouse. If anybody's
Yeah.
seen the movie The Lighthouse,
Oh, so good.
I
Quick interrupt.
really really love that story.
What you're hearing, Shania Twain is having a concert about 10 blocks from me. So if you hear sirens, fireworks, and things like that, like I said, this is a really good mic. So
I thought they were just
sorry.
celebrating because we were on.
No, they're
Yeah.
it,
Stroke our ego, damn it. But that's
yes.
exactly what's going on. We're like, shit, they're
The
doing a
neighbors
song.
shut up like right before we went live. I had neighbors shouting, and I'm like, oh
I
God,
know.
is this gonna turn to a screaming match? Like I'll just stay on mute the whole time.
There's one story that to me defines his entire work as an author and what he's trying to achieve. It's a 28-page short story called The Tomb. There's no Cthulhu, there's no mythos in
Is that the
this.
one in the cemetery?
Yeah. So what happens is the guy is
Oh,
he's remembering his life as a child, right? Like so when he was a child, the next door neighbor's estate burnt to the ground, but all that was left was their family mausoleum.
mhm.
And he got obsessed with this mausoleum. At one point in time, he even sees his name on the
Oh,
mausoleum.
and the box. I know which one you're talking about.
Yes. So
Okay.
the
Oh, that's
point of it is he starts as this normal child, but he's also kind of an unreliable narrator. You find out as the story goes along, because the more you read, the more absolutely beyond insane you realize this adult man is. And he tells the
Mhm.
story of his childhood and you can see the progression from when he was a normal child that made normal decisions and did normal things to the obsession over the tomb, the mausoleum, or the tomb and the mausoleum, and just this huge progression until he finds out later his name is in there, and he starts this weird obsession that, am I dead? Is this whole time, am I just dead? And I'm actually in that tomb, and there's some kind of weird parallel dimension thing happening. Well, eventually, I'm not going to ruin the ending for you, but it explains kind of what's going on. But the whole point of this story is this kid, he got obsessed as a kid and drove himself crazy over time. And
It was it has a really weird ending for it.
it does. And like the last 4 or 5 pages, that's when how crazy this guy is and how unreliable he is that it really sets in. Like you're already 20 some pages in and it's a really solid story. And then you get to that point where you finally stop and realize, wait a minute. And that's kind of that last 4 or 5 pages when the whole story flips on its head. And the ending
Mhm.
is probably one of the best endings of anything he ever wrote, to be honest with you, the most cohesive ending. And
Yeah.
that was the first Lovecraft story I ever read. I was 8 years old. It was the summer before I turned 9, because I was big into Poe and a lot of other things. And I had a teacher that said, "Hey, you're already reading at a college level, and you're into Poe. You already read King, read Barker, read Lovecraft. Here's the tomb. Here's the story." Printed
Mhm.
it out for me and everything, and like in a little binder, and brought it to me at school, and I read it like over the summer. And
Yeah.
I had that teacher again the very next year. So I handed the binder and had to do a whole essay on it. But oh my God, like that story influenced probably me as a writer so thoroughly, because I do this in a lot of my projects where I call it the creeping madness routine, where
Mhm.
I do a lot of first person writing, especially all my short stories, a lot of them. And even my novel, like the full length stuff that's not first person, I usually have a narrator of sorts, a very unreliable, insane narrator that's narrating the whole world and somehow knows everybody's emotions and feelings. But slowly I incorporate the narrator more into the story as I go. But it inspired a lot of the way I write, even normal things.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I made the switch from horror to speculative fiction, because Lovecraft is kind of the grandfather of speculative fiction, because
Yeah.
he took the gothic, writing and the horror of Poe. He added romance. There's romance in Lovecraft if you really look at it in the writing. There's a lot of romance in it. There's fantasy in it. There's sci-fi in it. He
Mhm.
combined all the elements to be to create what we, in modern times know as speculative fiction.
Right.
And I realized that my writing kind of goes that, adds in all these different elements and genres, and it's not it's undefinable. So we talk about him, being
Unknowable.
yeah, unknowable, exactly. So no one knew how to classify it. So it was speculative fiction.
Well, and again, that I think what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to go ahead and just talk about him for just a second, because he, like you said, I mean, he has done so much, I think, to birth what we have now. You do get a lot of people that kind of criticize his writing abilities and things like that, but the ideas there were great that he had. To me, I think some of them just kind of dropped off. You're just like, what, that was the end?
Yeah,
But I think he was a great writer. And I'm just glad that we have. I'm glad what he was able to give us as far as literature, and the thing about him wanting people to build on top of that. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
add to it.
Oh yeah.
So, all
He
right. So,
he had a
go ahead, Dale.
oh no, yeah, I was just saying his whole thing was like, hey guys, I wrote this. What do you think? Oh, you got an idea too? Let's do it back and forth. He had a whole writing
Mhm.
circle that they all kind of built things together with.
Yeah.
They borrowed from, it was like, let's do fan fiction like mad. And but it worked. They had great people doing it. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I'll
you
shut up
should
now.
to see the fandom page. I mean, it's just huge when you start getting into all that kind of stuff, and who begot who, and if it was Lovecraft or somebody else, and
Oh,
it's like
they
reading the
had
freaking Bible.
they would name he would name things like Clark Ashton Smith was after
Uh-huh.
Clark Ashton Smith and stuff. And so they had like he would rearrange people's names and have that, and they would do the same. They'd kill each other off in different stories back and forth,
Right.
and they just had a ball with it. It was awesome. But still is. But
Yeah. And then some of what is it? Well, we were listening to something, or I was listening to something the other day. They were like, really, technically, you're not supposed to be able to pronounce Cthulhu. It's really Cthulhu.
Yeah. We have not the tongue to properly pronounce his name.
Exactly. And then you would go mad.
Mhm.
All right. So just for everybody out there, we're talking about H.P. Lovecraft. So let's talk about H.P. Lovecraft a little bit, since there may be some people out there that just aren't, really, really familiar with him. I'm sure most people are familiar with a lot of his work. But so he was born Howard Philip Lovecraft on August 20th of 1890 in Providence, Rhode Island, and died March 15th of 1937. He was only 46 years old. He was an American writer of weird science, fantasy, and horror fiction. Because back then, they really didn't have a classification really for horror per se in what he was doing, so it was considered like weird fiction, is how I think they kind of referred to it as.
Yep.
Now he is
Some people still do.
as weird fiction.
Mhm.
He's best known for his creation of the Cthulhu mythos. He was the only child of Winfred Scott Lovecraft and Sarah Susan Lovecraft. Susie's family was of in other words, she had sustainable means at the time of their marriage, as her father, Whipple Van Buren Phillips, was involved in business ventures. Now, in April of 1893, after a psychotic episode in a Chicago hotel, Winfred, which was his father, was committed to the Butler Hospital in Providence. His medical records state that he had been doing and saying strange things at times for a year before his commitment. Just to kind of squirrel out 2 seconds, like a lot of the things that he went through at a very, very young age, you can see those ideals play out in a lot of what he wrote. Now, the person who reported these symptoms, of course, is unknown. Winfred spent 5 years in Butler before dying in 1898. His death certificate listed the case of death as general paracesis or paralysis, but really it was just a term that meant late-stage syphilis. So he died of syphilis, which will make you go insane, and then your face falls off.
Yeah, it's what my grandfather died of.
Yeah, it's bad stuff.
I mean, he really did in his 80s, like legit, and he got it from a 30-year-old woman in his 80s. Yeah, and he went nuts.
Good
I think
job,
it's got something
Grandpa.
to play with Lovecraft's mom, because she had a weird fixation after Winfred died with her son. Now, I wouldn't say that it went anywhere super where it shouldn't.
There is some
But
conjecture that is actually a possibility.
that it did, yeah.
A
But
possibility.
it was still inappropriate. Like, she would make him dress in his father's clothes and different things like that. So I think she put a lot of the fear of being left alone in him. But we'll get to that in just a moment. Now, throughout his life, Lovecraft maintained that his father fell into a paralytic state due to insomnia and overwork, and remained that way until his death. Now, it is not known whether Lovecraft was simply kept ignorant of his father's illness, or whether his later statement was intentionally misleading. After his father was institutionalized, Lovecraft resided in the family home with his mother, his maternal aunts, Lillian and Annie, and his maternal grandparents, Whipple and Robbie. Now, Whipple would be like a kind of become his father figure, his grandfather. According to family friends, his mother, known as Susie, doted on the young Lovecraft excessively, pampering him and never letting him out of her sight. Now, Lovecraft later recollected that his mother was permanently stricken with grief after his father's illness. So I don't know if that's just kind of something he made up in his mind to excuse her weirdness, or if that was just what everybody said within his household. I don't really know. Now, Whipple did become a father figure to Lovecraft in this time. Lovecraft noting that his grandfather became the center of my entire universe. Now, Whipple, who often traveled to manage his business, maintained correspondence by letter with the young Lovecraft, who by the age of 3 was already proficient at reading and writing. Now, Whipple encouraged the young Lovecraft to have an appreciation of literature, especially classical literature and English poetry. While there is no indication that Lovecraft was particularly close with his grandmother, Robbie, her death in 1896 had a profound effect on him. And by his own account, it sent his family into a gloom from which it never fully recovered. His mother and aunt wore black mourning dresses that terrified him. This is also the time that Lovecraft, approximately 5.5 years old, starting having nightmares that would later inform his fictional writing. Specifically, he began to have recurring nightmares of beings he referred to as night gaunts. 30 years later, night gaunts would appear in Lovecraft's fiction. And if we want to stop there for just a minute, if you guys have anything to add, and then we can just pick up like when he turned 8.
A big thing to know about his family is the last time he saw his father died in a mental institution, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. But his mother ties into that later. Which, if we're going to skip to when he's 8, yeah, we'll talk about that more in a minute. But that's he had a very strange relationship with his father to begin with. Night gaunts are also another term. A modern term for night gaunt is shadow people. It's the same thing. So when he talks about night gaunts, his original version of them before they got Cthulhu, mythoed out and these giant shadow things, like eventually, his original version of those were the equivalent of a humanoid figure that was made of shadow. And it was basically the silhouette that his mother, like when they wore those dresses, it was the silhouette, the shadow of them that was, you could see on the wall when they walk by. That's what his original concept for the night gaunt was. So basically, shadow people were his night gaunts back then.
Thank you, Dale, by the way, because I have to lean up to do that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I didn't want to take over, but
yeah,
I'm like,
no. If you want to do that, that would be amazing. But yeah, going back to what you were saying, Raz, that I know from what I've read about Lovecraft, like a lot of them thought that he may have suffered from sleep paralysis, which is very, very possible. I mean, like from what I understand, which I don't know how much his mother may have played into this, but he had a lot of physical problems when he was growing up. But you've got to think too. I mean, we're coming out of like the Victorian era, and we're in like the Edwardian era, where people are still taking like, arsenic for stuff. And I wouldn't be surprised if people weren't still taking mercury for certain things. So, and this kind of goes into his whole, and I don't want to make it about race, because I really want this to be separated, the man from his work, but we are talking about the man right now. And this is a society at the time that, no joke, if you had some sort of physical deformity that did not put you in the hospital, or there was not a way to have you permanently institutionalized, they would stick your ass in the attic and nobody would ever see you again, because it would embarrass the family. I mean,
it was
this
either
is the kind of society,
it was an
that he was living in.
Cellar, or you would just get shipped off to die at a mental institution, which was one of his biggest fears, actually.
Yeah.
And thus his obsession with Arkham Asylum.
Right. And there are quite a few places, which if we get to them at the end, I've got some pictures and things like that of some real life places that had a big influence, if did not directly show up in some of his stories. So, Dale, did you have anything else you wanted to add before I get into him as maybe a little bit older child? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I turned off my mic. I'm trying to.
I thought it was my end. I was like, oh no, did I disconnect again?
No, it's me. I'm trying to put up a picture of him though, unless you happen to have one right on hand. I don't have one
loaded.
Okay, I'm loading one right now then. Because for some reason when I'm adding it, it's not adding the right thing.
While we're doing that, fun fact: The one of the biggest, most popular fandoms in the world was heavily inspired by H.P. Lovecraft.
Hmm.
Just a little fun fact for
You,
you.
you kind of went out on me a little bit.
Yeah,
What did
you cut
say? I'm
off
sorry.
the.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
One of the biggest fandoms in the world was heavily inspired by H.P. Lovecraft, and that would be Batman.
I can see that with Gotham City.
Gotham,
Arkham Asylum.
yeah, all of it was
Yeah.
heavily, heavily inspired by Lovecraft, which is why it's probably one of the only DC things I actually like. To be
Yeah,
honest,
and-
yeah.
This I just wanted to pull up because you had been talking about the deformities and stuff, and this is what the man looked like. And when he was being raised, his mother was always telling him that he was like hideous and deformed, and like that he shouldn't be out loud. He couldn't go out in public because he would frighten people
Mhm.
because of how horrible of a creature he was. So he was completely dehumanized. He lived with a family of unreliable. I mean, like his entire childhood was based on unreliable narratives
yeah,
Oh yeah.
and stuff. And
Yeah,
like
most
finally
definitely.
going out and seeing people and having them not run away in fear was like, oh, I'm not a hideous monster. I mean, he wasn't, uh Chris
I don't
Hemsworth, or I don't know who to compare these
right.
days to. I don't know who people
Ryan
think are
Reynolds.
hot, but he wasn't a bad looking man by
No.
any means.
No, not at all. And it kind of reminds me of Comfortably Numb by Pink Floyd, where they and I know that they had kind of a little part in the movie The Wall, where basically that's what his mom did, was instill all her fears into him, and would do almost anything. I mean, it was almost like, what is it, Munchausen by proxy?
Yes.
Yeah, yep.
I mean, I think
Yep.
there was some of that going on.
Well, he
Because
had a
as
limp,
soon as
a
she's out of
pronounced
the
limp.
picture, he starts getting better.
He had a pronounced limp in his early days that they believed was some kind of physical issue or deformity, and turns out even the limp was completely psychosomatic because he was told that he had all these medical conditions, like you're saying right now, and
Yeah.
turns out a lot of the things that we thought about him, years ago, based on his, everything we heard about him in public and etc. A lot of it has turned out to be not actual physical ailments. It turns out that most of them were all mental in his head, instilled by mostly his mother, his aunt, and there's a famous lady that was a friend of his mother's that was actually the worst to him out of everyone, and I cannot remember her name offhand. I'll look that up in a minute.
Yeah, I don't know that one. I honestly think too that there was, I think there were times when he came out of his shell, but I think for the most part.
Have stole the earbud.
Hold on, guys. I was attacked by a Momo.
Ah,
Was
Jenny said
was,
that Dante
was
said
kind of
if it was female.
agoraphobic. He was just
Oh, yeah.
just didn't go out. Sometimes he didn't even come out of his room for weeks at a time.
I really relate to him on some of them.
Yeah, I'm borderline agoraphobic. There are days that I'm like, I'm terrified to walk out the front door. There's only a couple places that I can go to that also feel like home, like the haunt. That feels like just an extension of my house. So I've been really trying these last couple years to go other places to make it to where I don't get like he was, to the point where I'm just,
Well,
I don't want to be glued to my keyboard, just writing all day, and just, I love podcasting. Obviously, I'm here a lot and I'm writing a lot, but like I'm trying to make myself get out more so I don't end up like that.
Well, but you
And-
got to think too. I mean, and I don't mean to keep interrupting you, Dale. What I got to say is just really, really quick is that we understand those mental issues then. Whether they're just, whether it's our comfort level or what have you, we kind of have a better grasp on what's going on,
That's true.
and we can recognize it and say, oh, well, this is the symptom, or this is, this, and this is something that I can do to try to make the issue not.
she's the one who took that. Sorry, Bubba, you
Make
must
the
go.
issue not so much of an issue,
Right.
or try to work through it as best you can. I mean, could you imagine back in those times, like it was just either you would be considered to have some sort of like, I don't even want to say some of the words because they're really disparaging words that they would refer to people with even if it was, something like dyslexia or something,
Well, and they had levels of some of the words that we use today that nobody really thinks of. Like, for example, I'm epileptic. Okay.
Right.
Back in the day, epilepsy and seizures are both based off of terms that mean possession, Greek and French. And so they changed it to use the term fit when somebody was having a seizure because it was less, it didn't make you think of demons when somebody was having a
Right.
fit. They were saying, and now today I'm part of epilepsy communities, and they're like, we are not epileptics. We are people who happen to have epilepsy, and we do not have fits because that's, because now we have like a fit of pique, a fit of rage. And they're like, fit is a derogatory comment. It's like, actually,
Well, even
if you go
even the
back and
term a
study,
weak constitution,
Yeah.
it doesn't
But
doesn't mean you have a weak constitution. It just means that you've
Right.
got something going on that maybe the person standing next to you doesn't have. It's not good, bad. I mean, it's just a difference. Just like my eyes are this color and your eyes may be a different color.
and things like idiot,
Yeah.
different words like that. They were rated. Those were actually mental health terms on like somebody was this grade of intellect to where they couldn't actually function, and things that we consider to be a mental disability were categorized by terms like that. And now we use them every day. And I mean, you don't want to. It's not a nice thing to say, but it doesn't mean the same things it did before.
Right.
I would be locked up.
You guys are
just
forgetting
because I have epilepsy.
For all those things, for all mental disorders, for all physical disorders, the worst word of all was freak. And it's why a lot of people with mental and physical disorders got sold by their family to traveling shyster-ass freak shows. I know this because I run a shyster-ass freak show at the Haunt. We've all been researching together. I've been showing them all my research. And they're all like, oh, shit. Because our whole concept is we just have medical deformities that we're playing up to rob people of their money. That's our whole shtick at our freak show that we're building. So like, I've gotten them really deep into the history of all this. And a lot of what we're talking about, even Lovecraft had a fascination with freak shows as a result, because he thought at one point in time his mother was legitimately going to sell him to a traveling freak show.
They had the disappointments room that you'd already mentioned, which if people don't know what those were, if you're just catching in, this was totally real. You see them on movies and you're like, oh yeah, whatever. But like, no, they built like an attic room or just left the attic area in like the farmhouses with things. And they put a door on them and they locked them. And the kids would have like, they'd bring them up food, or the family, it'd be older family members too.
Pitch heads and trash.
But it's like they no longer existed.
Yeah, they might get a window that they could look out every now and then, but it wouldn't be somewhere that people could see in. And then they would go grab a bucket every now and then and make them clean themselves up and take out their waste. But they were kept, it was, and that, or they would sell them, or they would arrange to have them not be around anymore, stick them in an asylum and just let them waste away there where they were getting experimented on and stuff. And the other thing I was going to bring up, what we were talking about, agoraphobia. It wasn't understood as well back then. And what it is, I have agoraphobia. It's not, I'm not scared to go outside. I'm scared to be in places where I'm not in control. And that's emphasized with my seizures. If I'm somewhere and I drop and twitch, I need to be around somebody who knows what to do. They need to know, like, don't call an ambulance unless these couple of things happen. Like I hit myself and injured myself, I'm bleeding, or I don't stop. But because of that, I have very few places where I feel safe, or people that I am safe with. Like
I can understand that, because that comes from like a self-preservation safety kind of.
And he had no control even in his own home.
No.
So thinking and then being told that he's a freak outside of that and everything just makes it like, okay, I'm just going to stay in my room because it is the only place where people don't think that I am a horrifying, just being creature type of thing. Yeah. So it's crazy it's crazy how crazy they were back then.
Yeah.
And the way that it defined him, and sleep paralysis going along with the night gaunts and shadow people, that's something they frequently go together.
Mhm.
If you, I have a lot of really weird sleep disorders and stuff. And you guys know that I sleep a lot, but I used to be an insomniac, and now I'm getting back to where I have like 2 nights a week that I don't sleep at all anymore.
Right.
But I do the sleep paralysis combined with, and I'm sure he had this too, the false awakenings, which is where you're sitting there fighting and fighting and fighting, and you finally wake up and you start doing your thing, and you realize you're not in your own house, and then you realize that you're still asleep, and then you're stuck back in
Well,
your
and
body and you
that's the
can't move,
thing that
and it
when
cycles
and
over and over,
yeah, but
and you
and
see
that's one of the
things.
things when people say, "Oh, it was just sleep paralysis," that he was seeing these things, his night gaunts or what have you. But that makes sense because a lot of times he would say, "Well, they took me places," which
Hmm.
is not what you normally hear when somebody says that they suffer from sleep paralysis. You normally hear about the shadow person in the corner of the room or somebody sitting on their chest or something like that.
Right.
You don't normally hear about night gaunts wanting to take you and show you things and take you to places. So I found that a little interesting.
Yeah, if you have false awakenings going along with it, if you have my dreamscape, you're
Hmm.
screwed, because sometimes it'll be like, okay, I'm walking through my apartment, and then sometimes it's like, okay, and now we're saving the world from this, or oh crap, we're underground and there's a river coming over and we're going to be, drowned in about 5 seconds,
Right.
and oh whoosh, I'm here. But somebody with as many psychological problems as he had, as young as he had, I see that being an
Yeah, because they were
absolute.
pretty much continuous until, his mother passed.
Yeah. Well, we talk a lot about stuff like this in his life on You Can't Sit With Us. Think of all the cult leaders, the serial killers that we discuss. If you really look at the way he was raised and all the things he went through, this man had two options as an adult and the rest of his life: become an artist of some kind or a serial killer.
Oh yeah.
Those that he was perfectly geared to one or the other, and it was a very thin line, and he could go either way with that. And he chose, thankfully, to be an artist.
Well, and there is one comment I think because I think a lot of like I've started listening to what is it, the Lovecraft Literary Society podcast or something along
Yes.
those lines.
Lovecraft
And
Historical Society.
yeah, and it's very informative. Um, and I'm going to get to it here in a minute. But there were several times in his life that he thought about committing suicide. Um, but he kind of had he would say, okay, I thought about ending it all, but and I'll go over that here in just a minute because I found it kind of humorous a little bit, which I'm glad he decided that way and didn't decide the other.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, he had a lot going on. So I'm going to go ahead and get to where he's at the age of 8. So he took at the age of 8 he took a keen interest in the sciences, particularly astronomy and chemistry. He was he also examined the anatomical books that were held in the family library, which taught him the specifics of human reproduction that were not yet explained to him. As a result, he found that it virtually killed my interest in the subject. And you know, you, I've heard people say that he just had no interest, and then I've heard people say that he may have actually, and this would not been the time to come out, that he may have actually been homosexual. Um, but that's neither here or there. Even though that would be probably, it wouldn't surprise me, even with his outlooks on other people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, by the 1900s, Whipple's various business concerns were suffering a downturn, which resulted in the slow erosion of his family's wealth. He was forced to let his family's hired servants go, leaving Lovecraft, Whipple, and Susie being the only unmarried, being that she was the only unmarried sister alone in the family home. Now, in the spring of 1904, Whipple's largest business venture suffered a catastrophic failure, and within months, he died at the age of 70 due to a stroke. Now, after Whipple's death, Susie was unable to financially support the upkeep of the expansive family home on what remained of Philip's estate. Later that year, she was forced to move to a small duplex with her son. Now, Lovecraft called this time as one of the darkest of his life, remarking that in a 1934 letter that he saw no point in living anymore He considered the possibility of committing suicide. However, his scientific curiosity and desire to know more about the world prevented him from doing so.
Yep. That's about right.
That's about right. So, in the fall of 1904, he entered high school. Now, much like his earlier school years, which his schooling was on and off throughout just about his whole life, Lovecraft was periodically removed from school for long periods for what he termed near breakdown. He did say, though, that while having some conflicts with teachers, he did enjoy high school, becoming close with a small circle of friends. Lovecraft also performed well academically, excelling in particular at chemistry and physics. Even though I heard he didn't like math very much, which is kind of odd that he excelled in those two but did not like math. He began to write essays for the United Amateur Press Association, and in 1913 wrote a critical letter to a pulp magazine that ultimately led to his involvement in pulp fiction. He became active in the speculative fiction community and was published in several pulp magazines. Now, in the winter of 1918 to 1919, Susie, exhibiting the symptoms of a nervous breakdown, went to live with her elder sister, Lillian. The nature of Susie's illness is unclear, as her medical papers were later destroyed in a fire at the Butler Hospital. Now, Winfred Townsend Scott, who was able to read the papers before the fire, described Susie as having suffered a psychological collapse. But I've heard some people say that she may have actually been suffering from syphilis as well, that she caught from her husband. Now, I don't know how long it takes to go into remission or what have you, but I have heard some people speculate on that she could have died from it as well.
Her family had a history of severe mental disorder also.
Oh, did they?
Mm.
Why does that not surprise me?
Well, I mean, his father's family also did. It was the whole, yeah. It's literally both sides of his lineage had, yeah.
He actually, I hate to say it, but other than the really biggest flaw that he had, which was just prejudicing, judging everybody and like, just we refer to it as a racist now, but just being very judgy. It's a wonder he turned out quite as sane as he did.
I sometimes, and this is kind of weird, but not actually so weird, I confuse the things that he was freaked out by the things that Tesla was freaked out by, because they were very similar in my mind. And he was a big fan of Nikola Tesla as well.
I was going to say, I thought he was.
Nyarlathotep, or however you want to pronounce it, Nyarlathotep, was based on Nikola Tesla. Well.
She's good at pronouncing a lot of the Lovecraftian names.
I try. I'm not always that good at it, but I'm writing about it right now. But
right.
Yeah, they both had really weird childhoods, and then really like one of the, I think it might have been Tesla, like was super OCD and like had to open doors a certain way, and he couldn't stand circles, and he really hated fat people. It really bugged him. But Lovecraft had some very similar, like you're saying, judginess, very, very judgy about things.
Very judgy.
That you learn to be judgy when when you're being judged nonstop and like held up to some sort of ideal that only his mother could show him what exactly was perfect. Then anything that wasn't perfect, he'd be like, that's not what she said.
Well,
you can't get rid of those formative years, no matter how hard you try.
Yeah, people that don't. I mean, I know this because this is just a very interesting time in history. I as far as like the Victorian, the Edwardian, time period. There were extreme rules on everything. I mean, you want to talk about uptight, even though it was kind of a death cult society. They were all into the whole, like mysticism and all that kind of stuff. That whole era was just so full of social do's and don'ts, private do's and don'ts. You know, everybody was judging everybody for everything.
Also, Delphine, I think you did pronounce Nephilopet's name correctly.
Thank you. I try, and then I'm like, should I change it to this way? Should I change it that way? And you, Mother de la Mort, I am going to introduce to Joshua Rex, who I had on the other day, because
Mhm.
he is an historian, and his focus is the Victorian time period, particularly in New England. And he
You'll
lives in
love
Providence right
wow.
now.
Yeah, you will love
He's
him.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I caught a little bit of it when he was on, because I think, were you asking him about authors or something like that from Rhode Island, and he was talking about
Yeah.
it being like a really great place to be an author.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's out in Providence, and I know a couple of people who are there, and they're
Yeah, I would
it's an
love
amazing
to
place
meet
to be.
him.
Yeah, I'll look you guys up.
Oh yeah, you'll love him.
Okay.
He's so cool. Another
Okay.
interesting to think about, like with him, is like who his best friends were and why. Right?
Mhm.
He had some weird influences. One of his best friends in the world was actually one of my favorite magicians of all time, Harry Houdini.
Yes.
They met interestingly because the Weird Tales magazine that he often wrote for asked him to ghostwrite a column that was written by Harry, and he was not happy really with the story that Houdini wanted to write, but at the end
Mhm.
decided screw it, and he wrote this story called Under the Pyramids. It's listed as being written by Harry, but it was actually ghost written by Lovecraft. And out of that and that whole debacle that happened, they became close friends. And Houdini was one of the biggest purveyors of his work, like got him more jobs than anyone else in the world. Like kept
Mhm.
constantly bringing him onto projects, finding him writing work. Right up until Lovecraft died, up until the year he died, Houdini was
Yeah.
still getting him work. And another fun fact is he wrote an estimated 100,000 letters in his lifetime to all of his friends. And some of the people he corresponded with most regularly was Robert Bloch, who wrote Psycho, Harry Kuttner,
Mhm.
The Dark World, and Robert E. Howard from the Conan the Barbarian
Yep.
fame, and the poet Samuel Loveman. Like those were like them and Harry Houdini were like the biggest influences in his whole life. And they say that
Yeah.
if you really pay attention to a lot of his writing, there are a lot of characters that he used that are very heavily based on these people that he corresponded with and spent time with the most.
That's so cool. That's pretty
It,
cool.
it's crazy I mean, like, we have emails, but sitting down and handwriting out, you know, pages upon pages upon pages per letter. And people
Mhm.
that back then, everybody kept all their correspondence and things. And it's great that those that did, because we can track them then and see, like, okay, where was he in this frame of mind when this was going on? You know,
Well, and I think
be
that's
able to
how
find some of
we
that.
know a lot about kind of behind the scenes, because he was prolific about writing letters. And
Yeah.
I know a lot of podcasts and stuff like that I've listened to, they refer to a lot of those letters too, concerning information. But yeah, you can kind of tell when he's going through kind of ups and downs, based on, sometimes things were written.
Oh yeah. And the other very close person in his life, through very strange and odd reasons, they talk a lot about when Lovecraft met with Aleister Crowley, which we've also mentioned on You Can't Sew This and Other Things. There was a very weird relationship between those two men.
Yeah.
That would have been fun to sit down with. Get
Could you
him and
imagine
Crowley. Just
being in a
bring in
room with
John Dee
H.P.
and we're
Lovecraft and Crowley?
complete.
That would have been cool.
The thing is, they never physically met. That's the
No, but
weirdest
could you
thing.
imagine though?
They talk about like there's this big thing about when Lovecraft met Crowley. Okay, it's an ebook. Like, it got really popular. The thing is, they never physically met. But Lovecraft inspired Crowley more than anything else in the world, to the point where that had crazy fallouts. Because if you're going to talk about that leading into Crowley, you've also got to talk about Led Zeppelin, because
Well,
Crowley was there's a big thing between Led Zeppelin and Aleister Crowley, and everybody
and
thinks
Jimmy
it's a big
Page,
thing.
was it Jimmy Page?
Yes, there's
Yeah.
a very famous story about they were holding a ritual one night, and Jimmy Page simply disappeared from the room. They tore the room apart, curtains off the hooks, they tore the room apart looking for him. They said he just disappeared in thin air. They
Yeah.
go out of the room, they start searching the entire place that they're at. They go back, and he walks out of the room and says, "Where'd you guys go?" And he's
Yeah.
pulling something out of his mouth. And he claimed to them he was able to, he learned from Aleister Crowley that there was a specific seed that he had, and when placed under his tongue, it caused invisibility. That was like the side effect of this thing under your tongue. And he put it back in his tongue, walked into the room, and said, "Find me." They went in, nothing, and there was no secret compartments in this room. They checked everything, like they were breaking holes in walls to find him. And then they said in the center of the room, he was just suddenly there again, taking the thing out from under.
I remember hearing about that story. And I can see that because I mean, what isn't it? If I remember correctly, and I may be way off on this one, but that H.P. Lovecraft kind of followed what is it the teachings of Thelma or Thelema?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Oh, yeah.
you can see that in a lot of his what is it, the sacred writing or whatever they refer to it as, symbols or what have you.
Oh yeah. It's crazy, man. It's insane.
Quick question: do we do commercials on this show?
We do.
Okay, we're over an hour in. We should probably throw something up.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
No, you're absolutely fine.
Hinata showed up, and I was like, "Oh."
All right, here we go.
On behalf of our wonderful residents and the Pickwich Chamber of Commerce, welcome to Pickwich, Ohio. Pickwich offers some truly special natural beauty, great lodging and restaurants, unique cultural activities, and of course, plenty of outdoor recreation. We have so much for you to explore in this little slice of paradise. Like our beautiful Ritual Hill, Parcosa Caverns, or Nug Swamp. We can't wait to get a taste of you. So, come on down and visit us. You won't find a friendlier gosh darn little town that's neither here nor there. Anywhere else. Need more information or help planning your next trip? Visit us on the World Wide Web at pickwichohio.com or contact our Visitors Center at 513-278-7701. Hope to have you soon.
Okay, this
We're
is
back.
something stupid, but every time I see it, when it's all in one word, Pickwich, Ohio, from the sea on, I'm like, that could all be upside down.
Yeah.
It would be the same.
It's that vibe. It's definitely got that vibe to it.
It's stupid, but it's like, if you flip those over, it's the same letters.
I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised that there aren't secret codes in everything coming out of that little town.
It's possible. You should see
Not
some of
be
the
surprised
storefronts.
at all. Do what?
Yeah.
Some of the storefronts we didn't take pictures or video of, man. Like they put little signs in their windows.
Look at the front of our building, for God's sake. Why do you need that many windows in so many weird places?
That was so cool.
The weird thing is, if you stand here, and I do this every time before I leave, like the windows, you can't quite see how weird they are. They look physically weird, but when you're inside looking out of them, I don't know if it's because like they installed different types of glass. Like there's obviously different ages of glass as you look through the windows, and some are like kind of tinted a little bit. Like you almost get a different view outside of like some kind of distortion or something from each window, and each one is just a little bit different than the one before it. It's really hard to explain unless you actually stand there. And
you know what's so bad is these unusualities are starting to just seem normal to me.
Yeah, and so this is how it's been for me forever. It's like this is just cool shit. Like I literally stood up in the top and just smoked a whole blunt to myself and just stood like for a few minutes at each window just looking out to see like the little differences between stuff. It's weird because you're looking at the same stuff. Like it's the same scenery.
But it looks different. Yeah.
It's not like there's a building where there wasn't a building or anything like that. Just your perception of the same scenery from each window is just slightly different enough that you're like, wait a minute, that's not right.
I've got a word for it. What if we go with Pickwich peculiarities?
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one.
Ooh, that's
I like the
good.
alliteration of that too. That's beautiful.
I'm all about alliteration these days.
Oh yeah, I like that. All right, so let's.
Sorry,
we're gonna be here for 4 hours. No, it's my fault. I'll get off on a tangent and we'll just go for days.
Well, you're with two people that do the same thing regularly, so it's kind of my bad. This is
Sorry,
one of my favorites ever. Like on the subject of Lovecraft, I could speak eternally, like legitimately.
Ratatosker actually is hiding right now. I don't know where he went. He grabbed the booze and left.
That's okay. I've still got my squirrel lighter in his
Okay.
honor.
Okay, so where did I end? It psychological collapse, didn't I? Of his
Yeah.
mom.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
You were talking about how it's believed that she might have also had syphilis, but that was never actually confirmed.
Yeah, it was never confirmed, but it wouldn't surprise me. So neighbor and friend by the name of Clara Hess, interviewed in 1948, recalled instances of Susie describing weird and fantastic creatures that rushed out from behind buildings and from corners at dark. In the same account, Hess described a time when they crossed paths in downtown Providence and Susie was unaware of where she was. Now, in March of 1919, Susie was committed to Butler Hospital like her husband had before, which had to have been nightmarish for H.P. Lovecraft. And in late 1990, or 1990, that would be weird. 1919 saw Lovecraft become more outgoing, however. After a period of isolation, he began to join friends in trips to writing gatherings. And on March 24th of 1921, Susie died in Butler Hospital due to complications from an operation on her gallbladder 5 days earlier. Now, Lovecraft's initial reaction, expressed in a letter written 9 days after Susie's death, was a deep state of sadness that crippled him physically and emotionally. He again expressed a desire that his life might end. Lovecraft's later response, however, was relief, as he had become able to live independently from his mother. His physical health also began to improve, although he was unaware of exactly why that was. I wonder why. Now, despite Lovecraft's reaction, he continued to attend amateur journalist conventions, and Lovecraft this is where he met his future wife, Sonia Green, at one such convention in July. Now, they did wind up getting married, and Lovecraft and his wife, they wound up moving to New York City in 1924, and later became the center of a wider group known as the Lovecraft Circle. They introduced him to Weird Tales, the magazine, which would become his most prominent publisher. Now, Lovecraft's time in New York, however, took a toll on his mental state and financial condition. And there were some issues with, I think, that Sonia's business or something went under, and she actually moved out and left him there in New York to pursue work somewhere else. Basically, during that time period, you went to wherever the work was available.
Oh, yeah.
So she had moved out of the area in order to get work. Now, like I said, it took a toll on him as well as financial conditions. He did wind up returning in 1926 to 66 Prospect Street in Providence, which would become his final home. And it's during this time that he produced some of his most popular work, including Call of Cthulhu, At the Mountains of Madness, The Shadow over Innsmouth, and The Shadow Out of Time. And in late 1936, he witnessed the publication of The Shadow over Innsmouth as a paperback book. 400 copies of the book were printed, and the work was advertised in Weird Tales and several fan magazines. However, Lovecraft was displeased, as this book was riddled with errors that required extensive editing. It sold slowly, and only approximately 200 copies were ever bound. The remaining 200 copies were destroyed after the publisher went out of business for the next 7 years. By this point, Lovecraft's literary career had reached its end. Shortly after having written his last original short story, The Haunter of the Dark, he stated that the hostile reception of At the Mountains of Madness had done more than anything to end my effective fictional career. His decline psychologically and physically, his state made it impossible for him to continue with his writing fiction. And due to his fear of doctors, Lovecraft was not examined until a month before his death. After seeing a doctor, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer of the small intestine. He remained hospitalized until he died. He lived in constant pain until his death on March 15th of 1937 in Providence. Now, accordance with his lifelong scientific curiosity, he kept a diary of his illness until he was physically incapable of holding a pen. Lovecraft was listed along with his parents on the Phillips family monument. Now, throughout his life, Lovecraft, though, was never able to support himself from earnings as an author and an editor. He was virtually unknown during his lifetime and was almost exclusively published in pulp magazines before his death. However, a scholarly revival of Lovecraft's work began in the 1970s, and he is now regarded as one of the most significant 20th century authors of supernatural horror fiction. Many direct adaptations and spiritual successors followed. Works inspired by Lovecraft, adaptations, or original works began to form the basis of the Cthulhu mythos, which utilizes Lovecraft's characters, settings, and themes. And in 1977, fans erected a headstone in Swan Point Cemetery on which they inscribed his name, the dates of his birth and death, and the phrase, "I am Providence," a line from one of his personal letters. Yeah, and so we can go into the rest of it, but that's pretty much it. He didn't live an excessively long life.
No, he did not.
No, and yeah, he was. It was very unfortunate that he didn't become popular as an author until after he passed.
Posthumous.
And yeah, and there is a huge, like, we aren't going to get into it here. Hopefully, I would suggest we don't take a side on it over whether or not Derleth was a blessing or a curse on Lovecraft's work.
Yeah.
Because August Derleth
Right.
saw him published, but there's arguments that he might have changed some of the stuff or stolen some of the things, but none of it is provable. So it's all out there. But he did have so many people.
That's the whole hoopla around the copyright and stuff, right? If I'm not mistaken, because it was left to. He didn't have a will, but he had told his ex-wife or a friend, I think it was, that he wanted certain people to publish his work after he passed away. Is that what I'm remembering correctly?
Kind of.
And it comes from that?
Small piece.
Well, the thing, he couldn't, nobody could get it published was one problem because he was so lesser known. So Derleth, I believe he founded Arkham House Publishing in order to publish the complete works of H.P. Lovecraft, and then it goes on with other people. But Derleth himself also profited a lot off of being part of the Lovecraft circle. So publishing Lovecraft helped Derleth publish himself.
He basically used Lovecraft to find his own legitimacy.
Right.
Yeah. But
I've often wondered why that is. Like Poe was the same way. I mean, he had some success. But in the end, I mean, he pretty much died in the ditch.
Because we didn't have the ability to advertise Edgar Allan Poe in a bookstore in like London.
Yeah.
At the same time as we do now. A lot of people were famous within a small circle.
Right.
And then didn't get anywhere. And depending on where your circle was, well, sorry, but Providence, Rhode Island isn't really that big of a place to sell books.
Right. And I guess it's just kind of a crux for an artist in general, because there were a lot of painters that were like that.
Yeah,
they didn't become popular after they died.
He had to rely completely on the magazines to advertise for him, because he didn't have a lot of publicists and stuff back in that day that would go the distance unless they knew you were going to get somewhere. And hi, Shelby. We're doing good.
Shelby.
Hope you're doing good.
Hello. And yeah, I know we haven't really been going over the comments, guys, but we had a lot to cover here. And we just, we'd be here 4 hours, guys. So.
Yeah. A big take. Go ahead.
Speaking of all the different people who became part of his circle in the Lovecraft thing and how it's still going today, I'm totally just self-promoting the shit out of Raz and I. But there's some books out there that you can get your hands on. Oh, there's one. There's another one. Two of books where you can catch. Raz and I actually are part of the Lovecraftian circle that has extended into the future. And also, I would like to include in this, I tried to explain to my mom everything that we've just gone over. Well, not his history,
Mhm.
but like how it worked, how he had circle, how it goes, and how people are allowed to still write about him. Because he didn't copy, well, it's copywritten, but the way that they did it was such that anybody could build upon it. It's not just like,
Right.
it's not like Harry Potter where she owns everything. Lovecraft intentionally left his world open for everyone to write in. Therefore, if you added
Exactly.
to it, you had your stuff was included in that open world. You couldn't just suddenly own this one part of it. So I explained it all to my mom when I was getting published, and I sent this to my publisher, and he thought it was great. So in both of those books, in the opening is this quote from my mom explaining in layman's terms what the H.P. Lovecraft thing is, and it's he puts in this, he's telling everything about it. But instead of boring you with a bunch of dry facts, I'll just share with you how an author's mother describes Lovecraft and his body of work to her friends and family. So basically, there's a dead guy that made up some stories, and since he died, there have been people keeping his stories going. The authors of this anthology are here to keep the characters going and to add to the mythos. We hope you enjoy them all.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, yeah, just so he died and people kept writing about his stuff? Yes.
Well, the thing is, like,
Okay.
he did the same thing. Like, you talked a lot about King in Yellow in the previous episode.
Mhm.
And the thing is, a lot of people improperly credit Lovecraft with the King in Yellow, when in fact that was not an original thing of his either. That was something
You
that
know,
he
we
did
we
more
were
of.
talking about that today,
Yeah.
and it is so intertwined that it almost makes your head feel like it's going to explode. But you are absolutely right.
It does. It's crazy. Like, when you really look at that, like, he lived his life as a collective. Like, he saw, like, art, like his fiction, his writing, to be not his, like what we've been talking about, but it belonged
Mhm.
to everyone, and he wanted to be part of the world. And this was his way of really being part of the world while being unable to be a part of the world.
Right, and because we were talking about that early today, to where it was like, because we were talking about the King in Yellow. Well, it started out with the Pallid Mask, and the Pallid Mask is actually, if I'm not mistaken, one of the characters in the play The King in Yellow. And I know, Raz, you know a lot more about this than I do, but from what we were able to gather, the way that we now kind of assume that Lovecraft was kind of the one that came up with this idea is because in his, was it Mountains of Madness or the Cthulhu mythos, where he referred to the yellow sign. And that's kind of how he pulled certain aspects of the King in Yellow into his work. Is that correct? That's the way we were
That
understanding.
is correct, because that then
Okay.
became the elder sign.
Right.
And they talk about the elder sign a lot and Call of Cthulhu, but I mean, the elder sign is a lot in Mountains of Madness, because that is a species of creatures called the elder things, is what they're
Yeah.
uncovering basically in the ice in Antarctica, more or less, which is kind of
Right.
really reminiscent of the Thing. A very similar type of creature, like, basically is what it is. But yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah, because the King in Yellow was a shapeshifter, right?
more or less.
Hester.
Yeah, Haster was more of that. But like, the thing about the King in Yellow is, it's one of those things that's also not supposed to be truly definable. So the King in Yellow has qualities of a lot of different things, but you can't really say that he's one thing or another because he's the King in Yellow, which is also what, if you've ever heard of or read the Dark Tower series by Stephen King, the great
Mhm.
people of all things that's trapped in the tower, was basically his version of King in Yellow.
I got you. And the only one that actually took what you would consider a human form was the one that you and Dell were talking about just a minute, like earlier. Nithotep?
Nyarlathotep.
Yeah, what you guys said.
The one based on Tesla. Yes, he was the black
Yes.
man who came down, like, not just, okay, not saying this in a racist way, black man, like jet black.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like,
He wasn't African American. He was literally the color of night.
he
Yes.
came from the
It is.
pyramids and walked in the depth of blackness in his clothing and his skin and
Mhm.
everything and his
Yes.
eyes.
And he was considered an outer one. Was it an outer god?
An elder one.
He is
The elder ones,
um,
and then the old ones.
The
The
old
old,
ones and
like
the other ones,
Cthulhu is an old one, but then you had your outer gods, right?
it was
Whereas where it was Azrathoth comes from. This is where it gets so confusing.
it does get very confusing. Nyarlathotep is the son of and the prophet, basically, of Azathoth. But he also shows up and he just likes to mess with humans. Like, he doesn't care for humans, but they're fun
Right.
to play with. So kind of
Right.
like a really, and I don't even want to say more demented form of Loki, because people think of Loki now as like a Marvel Universe character, but the real Loki and Azathoth had a lot kind of in common. They
Right.
would just mess with people and do whatever. And so that's why he would say, oh, so Cthulhu's doing something. He needs a little bit of help here. I'll do that because it allows me to mess with humans. And he spent
Right.
more time speaking with them and inspiring them and giving them these great creations and then just abandoning them.
Right.
And they'd lose everything.
We have Azathoth's family tree
Yeah.
up a little bit.
Odd daughter found this today.
Oh, nice.
I'll let you go over it. Okay. So Azathoth, let's see. No, you understand this better than I. So Azathoth's birth.
Nyarlathotep, nameless mist, and darkness. Nameless mist.
Birth.
Birth Yogg-Sothoth, and darkness. Birth Shub-Niggurath. And both Yogg-Sothoth and Shub-Niggurath, their children is Nuggin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Then from Nug came Cthulhu. From Cthulhu came Zoroaster. And then from Zoroaster, Yagash the Ghoul.
Yeah.
And then from Yagash the Ghoul came what? Yaba the serpent. And then from Yaba the serpent came Goth the burrower, which was one of the little people. From Yeb came Hus the Goth. Huh? You say it. You say it better.
Goga? It's something like that.
Goga. I think he just made up words. I really do.
Just slammed it.
He did.
Yeah.
He would wake up in the middle of the night and come up with something.
Yeah. And then from Tashatho Gaga came Yabo.
Came Lady Gaga.
Came Lady Gaga. And then from Yabo came Nush the Eternal. From Nush the Eternal came Giles Grainer, Lord of the something or another. And then from him came Clark Ashton Smith,
who was another writer that was part of the. Yeah, I'm trying to find the same one that you're on in all mine.
Sorcerer, ancestor of okay. No, I'm sorry, I was reading. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying I'm trying to find the one that you guys are on, and all of my I open them up and they're like this big on my screen, so I can't.
We found this on fandom, and I just took a screenshot of it.
So I'm not
a little sub page.
I'm not a huge fan of using Wikipedia as a source, but there is an amazing, probably one of the, and I've looked at a lot of this, and like it's very well linked to actual places to read. So pay attention to the links to the bottom to like actually get the real information. I'm gonna send that to you guys in private chat. You can put the link up if you want for people. But this is actually a fantastic, probably one of the most comprehensive lists I've ever seen of the great old ones. And you were kind of right with like the outer gods, like technically, Azathoth was an outer god, but like the concept of outer gods, old gods, great old gods, elder gods, they were terms that were like very used kind of loosely and a little bit interchangeable at times. So it's really
it gets very confusing.
It gets super confusing, and a lot of that lore was built on later, like as time passed. Like again with the collectives of people adding terms,
right,
and shifting things around.
Yeah, it's and technically like Cthulhu. Oh my God. Cthulhu is well, he is a descendant, but he's also not supposed to be so much worshipped as he came here to be a priest, and then he bred a bit and got dead, and so now he's down dead and dreaming in Arlia, which
Right.
that's how I pronounce it. And but see, I had this thing, and it was like I used to do limericks, and there was one that rhymed better with Arlia, so that's why I changed it.
Well, we have a little song for everybody at the end. So
Nice. I can't wait for that.
I
Excited,
I
actually.
dread that moment.
we'll get it. We
No.
I,
practiced.
I actually
Uh-uh.
have a question for Odd Daughter, if that's all right with you, Odd Daughter.
Yeah.
I'm always curious as to how people get into Lovecraft. And by the way, I love the hat. The little, I love the little Cthulhu you got going on there. What got you into like the Lovecraft mythos? Like, what was that thing that kind of drew you into it?
I don't know. Like, I've always been a big fan of horrors you cannot explain.
Okay.
Like, because you always have like the like traditional horrors, as Odd Mother was saying, but something about cosmic horror is way more terrifying since it's one of the innate fear of humanity, the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
And you kind of got into creepypasta, and I can see where creepypasta, in my opinion, is kind of a offshoot from cosmic horror, in my opinion.
And the fear of the unknown, it kind of reminds me of the fear of the dark, because you're not the fear, not the fear of the dark itself. It's just what's inside of it, and
Which you can't see.
that's the unknown.
Yeah.
I
And
like
then we
that.
were watching. You came up there. I was sitting up there listening to a podcast that was the story was inspired by H.P. Lovecraft, which we were actually looking at some of his books at a bookstore, but we were listening to that Malevolent podcast, and she was like, "What are you listening to?"
Good.
And I think we were on like the second or third episode.
You
in the
were
podcast,
on the first season on was it
and she just ate
the
it up.
the last couple of episodes of Chris.
Yeah, and she just ate it up, and it just kind of went from there.
So is it almost like therapeutic in a way for you, like that moment, like you realize in this world that you don't have control of anything, so there's that kind of that draw to the unknown because you can't name it, you can't put your finger on it, but it almost like it brings you a comfort to read about it.
Kind of like that.
Okay. That's a
That
really
makes sense.
interesting thing. And I really like to hear what brings people to Lovecraft because everybody's got a different story. But one of the most common themes is what you brought up. It's because we all fear the unknown so much that to embrace this fiction that's all about the unknown, it gives us not a sense of control, but a sense of at least understanding things out there that we can't explain. And if we're just afraid of everything, that really doesn't serve us in life. But if we learn to accept that there's things that we can't explain, it helps us kind of enter the world and be a part of the world around us a little bit more. It's like this theme amongst a lot of people that are fans of Lovecraft, I'd say.
Right.
That's
That
really
makes
cool.
a lot of sense.
Cool.
Okay.
You know, stab me in the eye.
I'm sorry. I tried to bend her back. I tried to bend her back really good, so I didn't. There we go.
Jenny had to explain creepy pastas to a 62-year-old woman today.
Think about it like this: Odd Mother brought you into this world, and she can stab your eye out anytime she wants, man.
There you go. I can throw your eyeball into next week.
Yeah.
I have learned,
Me too. It's
Jenny,
cool.
based on talking with my mother, because she doesn't care about history. She doesn't care about the backstories of a lot of things. She's just like I said, she's a big MCU fan. And so I'll be like, they're doing the Norse mythology wrong. I don't care. Just tell me what I need to know for this movie. Is the whole comic book wrong? Yes. Well, then it doesn't matter what Loki really is. What do you see in the comic? Well, he's his brother then. Well, then just tell me about that. And so I've had to learn how to abbreviate everything into 2 sentences or less, or she won't even listen to it.
See, none of us would last in the Lovecraft like universe because we were all too freaking nosy. We would all be mad as a hatter.
We'd be like, "Oh, what's this?" and then goes insane.
I just want to point out that you can't spell crazy without me. So I was just born that way. I think that's why I kind of like write a lot of like I don't know. There's a lot of similarities to things and techniques I use that Lovecraft used because I'm already crazy
Mhm.
anyway, and it just you get to a point of craziness where you're not insane because you're aware of it. So instead of insane, you're unsane, and that's when you recognize the fact that you're batshit crazy and you use it to your advantage. And I think that's the point in life where I'm at now.
And quick thing for everybody who's watching, and most of you probably know this, but the reason that there are 5,000 versions of the complete works of H.P. Lovecraft out there right now are because he has passed his copyright. Therefore, anybody who wants to can pick up all of his works or just specific works that they want to put in together. And as long as they add in either 10 illustrations or make 10 differences, like they write a short blurb at the beginning and the end and a couple of footnotes about things, you're allowed to go ahead and publish that and use it to make a passive income, is what a lot of
See,
places do. So
I
a lot of
remember you
places
telling
will
me
take,
about this, and I was like,
yes.
"What?"
Yeah, Poe is the same way. A lot of companies, they just grab it and throw together, like, give me so many comments, give me a new cover, and you can do it. But if you don't want to spend money on it, it is also all free on Project Gutenberg and other
Mhm.
places that I support Project Gutenberg, and they love it when people help them out by typing up new stuff or entering new material there. But so you can read it all for free.
And listen, because they also have a group that's dedicated that you can sign up for and volunteer for anytime if you've got a good recording set up. And I'm about to volunteer for them, where you basically take old books and you translate them into like spoken word, and you send the
Right.
recordings. And so, not for the people that can't read the books, you can also listen to them for free as well. It's a really good
Oh, that's
project.
cool.
Gutenberg sounds like a type of cheese.
No, it
Oh,
was
it's
actually the printing press.
No,
yes,
but
the
it sounds
Gutenberg Bible was the first printed book
Mhm.
because Gutenberg invented the printing press. Well, he and somebody else at about the exact same time. Gutenberg's the one
And
who
also,
won in the end and got his name on it.
and also
I'm
Steve
hungry for
Gutenberg.
cheese.
Steve Gutenberg was is a very famous actor.
Yeah.
Police Academy, baby.
Okay, Jenny says she loves horror movies and is into horror short stories. Today, Raz research has become important to us, so that also explaining where I'm finding. Okay, yeah.
She finds shit that I didn't even remember. Right, like she posted a thing for a movie premiere I did that it took me like an hour after watching the video of myself talking about this movie that I even remembered that I was in it. And I guess I
Really?
looked at IMDb and apparently I was in this movie and I did this big like red carpet thing and I'd forgotten that video existed until she dug it up somehow and posted it.
This isn't like the alt world Raz, is it?
No, it was clearly me, like a younger version of me and everything. It was like I was looking at myself like, whoa, when did I do that? It happens a lot.
I like when you come across things like that. I don't
When
tend
did
to do
that
that.
happen?
I don't tend to do that online, but I have gone through boxes of stuff and found stuff from high school, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember this.
Oh, she digs deep enough. She's gonna find like videos of me doing karaoke online that's on YouTube, I think still somewhere, all kinds of weird things of mine that are just everywhere over the years.
Well, you know, once it's on the internet, it's always on the internet.
Always will be.
Yeah, always will be somewhere.
So, did you still want to do a reading? Because I did find an even shorter story than you came up with, and it's a flash fiction piece long before like flash fiction was even a term. Like I'm talking, it'll take like maybe 3 to 5 minutes, worst case scenario, to read.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that, and then we'll do our little
The
thing,
song,
and then we'll go ahead and close down for the night if you guys are in agreement. 'Cause my stuff.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
fine.
Okay.
Hey guys.
So this is called Memory by H.P. Lovecraft, of course. And like I said, this was flash fiction before flash fiction was even a term, so it's super short. In the valley of Nis, the accursed waning moon shines thinly, tearing a path for its light with feeble horns through the lethal foliage of a great upas tree. And within the depths of the valley, where the light reaches not, move forms not meant to be beheld. Rank is the herbage of each slope, where evil vines and creeping plants crawl amidst the stones of ruined palaces, twining tightly about broken columns and strange monoliths, and heaving up marble pavements laid by forgotten hands. And in trees that grow gigantic and crumbling courtyards leap little apes, while in and out of deep treasure vaults writhe poisonous serpents and scaly things without a name. Vast are the stones which sleep beneath coverlets of dank moss, and mighty were the walls from which they fell. For all time did their builders erect them, and in sooth they yet serve nobly, for beneath the gray toad makes his habitation. At the very bottom of the valley lies the river, than whose waters are slim or slimy and filled with weeds. From hidden springs it rises, and to subterranean grottos it flows. So that the daemon of the valley knows red, nor whither they are bound. The genie that haunts the moonbeams spake to the daemon of the valley, saying, I am old and forget much. Tell me the deeds and aspect, and name of them who built these things of stone. And the daemon replied, I am memory, and am wise in lore of the past, but I too am old. These beings are like waters of the river, then, not to be understood. Their deeds I recall not, for they were but of the moment. Their aspect I recall dimly, for it was like to that of the little apes in the trees. Their name I recall clearly, for it rhymed with that of the river. These beings of yesterday were called man. So the genie flew back to the thin horned moon, and the daemon looked intently at a little ape in a tree that grew in a crumbling courtyard. And that's it.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Thank you,
Very
Brad, for reading
nice.
that.
No problem.
I
Yeah.
love when you do a reading.
It's one of his more beautiful pieces because now, I mean, it's short, obviously, so that's good compared to the 28-page tome that I love. But the wording that he uses, it's not quite flowery, but you'd almost want to describe it as being like, flowery and like lustrous. But the wording choices he made in that one, while gave, enough exposition to make you like almost entranced by it, it was actually a lot less exposition than he normally used in other shorter works, even. So this was a
Right.
very concise version of Lovecraft that's not seen in any other story that he's ever written. Like this, it stands very much apart from a lot of his other work, but you get this feeling of eternity, like the nameless, the old gods, like
Right.
this whole vibe, and it kind of sums him up in a very short way. And if that hearing that, if that's something you like, that gets expanded upon. Of course, that flowery language gets drawn out heavily. We're not talking
Mhm.
like Anne Rice level or anything here, but or Stephen King level, but it's succinct in its own unique way. It
He doesn't
seems,
go all Henry James with it.
yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's the best example actually. But like he gives you all these details, and sometimes you're like, oh my god, this is too much. But if you really stop and break it down, because he is also kind of the grandfather run on sentences a lot. He uses a lot of
I
commas,
was gonna
sometimes
say
just like
that.
20 commas in one paragraph, and you just realize it's one sentence. Um,
Right.
it seems like this giant run on thought, but that's also how he still instills that feeling of the creeping madness that he's so familiar with. He
Right.
gives you,
Right.
it seems like he's giving you all this information because a million commas, but he's actually describing a lot of things and showing you how they all weave together. And him doing it
Right.
in such a shorter form with this is the fact that he was able to write that at all with the way he writes and just sum it up like that and give you that feeling is it's kind of beautiful, man. I really dig that.
It was really good, and I didn't realize until I started listening to that literary podcast that not all of his work was like existential dread and things like that.
Mhm.
A lot of his work is a lot different. Um, you can still see, like you said, you still get that vibe.
Oh yeah.
But they were talking about, and I'm just getting into that section where they were talking about like his Dreamland series.
Oh
Um,
yes.
how that was a lot different than some of his other stuff. So um, I don't know if they're doing if they're going like in procession of as he started writing and getting closer and closer to when he really started like putting out like Call of Cthulhu and things like that. But um, you can see a progression of kind of where he's starting to get all these ideas and things like that. It's kind of the way I'm seeing, you know,
Oh yeah.
because I'm not that learned on him. I mean, I know just enough to get by,
Yeah.
but I'm constantly learning more.
The thing about Lovecraft is, man, you can dedicate your whole life to him, and many people have. Is Tom Cruise, for example, which is a totally weird
Mhm.
example. There's a lot of writers out there, even King at times, Barker, all kinds of amazing writers, right? And it doesn't matter how much time you spend studying him, you will find new interesting things that creep up about him continuously. You just there's not enough time in one lifetime to really understand his writing and why it was what it was, even at different periods of his life.
Right.
There is no answer. At the end of the day, there really is no answer. This is who he was. This is how he wrote, and it's how he saw the world, and it was his language. It's almost like Shakespearean if you think about it. Like the way he writes,
Hmm.
it's his Shakespeare basically.
And that makes sense. That makes sense. Because like some of Shakespeare's stuff, like I've had to read it a couple of times
Right.
before I really decided if I liked it or not. And that was one of the things that they were saying on that podcast was that, they may be talking about a particular short story or long story or what have you. And I heard a few people say, well, I didn't really know how I felt about it at first. I had to read
Mhm.
it 2 or 3 times, and then I realized I really liked it.
Oh yeah.
I gotta
It's
get some
one of those
water.
things.
So, but yeah, it's definitely if you're into horror, that's I would definitely I would definitely recommend looking into H.P. Lovecraft if anybody out there has not done so. Just
And
separate the man from the work.
and if you want to do some great stuff with the whole circle, if you can find used copies, it's easier. But Chaosium, who put out the game, also
Mhm.
released an entire series of books that cover different sections. There's like the Lair of the White Worm, and there's one that is just the
I love that
Encyclopedia
movie.
Cthulhiana.
It was an early
So
Rat movie.
so you can go through and it's just an encyclopedia of every character, every place, everything, where they show up at, how to pronounce them, who they're related to, and who came up with them, who added
Right,
them to the mythos.
right.
Great series of books. They also had a contest. There were 2 contests that they used to hold, and they set about them in these books, and that's part of where I think um, that movie I Cast a Deadly Spell came from. Was
Mhm.
there were one contest was to write entirely in H.P. Lovecraft style about something completely different, and the
Right,
other one was to write completely in H.P. Lovecraft's world in a totally different style,
Yeah.
like
right.
the Hallmark Christmas version of Cthulhu or something, or the noir style, or all the different things. So those are, if you can find those out there, it's fun to get entered into and just play.
Oh
It's
yeah.
just like
Mhm.
I've got this huge playground
Oh
and
yeah.
it's legal.
See, I wish I had the gift for writing. It's just something I have never been able to do. And like I have to give both you guys kudos that you can do that because it just seems so as much as I want to and as much as I try, um, I feel very insignificant in this cosmos.
Oh, you shouldn't though, dude, because your art is with your hands. The things that you create, that doll that you did for Vice recently, that is
Mm-hmm.
fucking beautiful. I'm sorry for my language. That is beautiful. It is gorgeous. I wish I had the skill to even do a tenth of what you do with that, man. Like, and that's the thing about our whole collective group. Like, we all had like we're right.
Hmm.
Your art, like, Aki and even Hexus, like, we all have like these different areas of this like art that we're good at, and we look at each other and we go, I wish we could do that. And then by doing that, we're also downplaying our creativity. So I'm not going to let you downplay your own creativity here, man, because you are amazing at what you do. We just
Don't
do it
forget
Thanks.
in a
Steve.
different way. Yeah.
Thank
Oh,
you.
Steve
yeah.
has
It's
more
just I
patience
guess
Oh,
than
my
it's
God, Steve.
how we
Yes.
all speak to the universe. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I wish I had that ability because it would be so much fun.
okay.
Like
What I've learned is
when Dale's saying it's so much fun, I was like, I could see how that would be so much fun.
oh, it's fun to read too, just to catch all these different people's things. But what I've learned is I have 3 friends in Providence, all of which I've spoken to about their writing and stuff, and all of them are like writers and musicians and artists, and so if
I
you
got a
move to
long title
Providence,
list.
they give you like a shot that suddenly gives you 5 different classical talents that
Yeah,
just
it's
show
crazy.
up. I'm pretty sure because they don't want anybody living
Maybe we
there.
need to go to Providence for the weekend.
I'm like, yeah,
Down.
if I could just move to Providence, I could get the odds shot there and go ahead and come back here and have
You can
like,
stop by and drop up and see Mark Tufo over in Maine. I got an open invite to a barbecue. I'll bring you along.
all right.
We'll have a good
All
time.
right.
We'll all have
I still want you guys to interview him just so that I can like fangirl
Oh,
at
I'm
him.
gonna actually message him this week because did you guys know I brought back the old show I used to do for like 70 years, Twisted Geekdom. I've been doing that on alternate Mondays. I'm actually about to reach out to him probably the next week because he was the guest that ended up winning our title of the guest that was with us the most amount of times, and it was over a dozen times. Like he was
Right.
such a good friend of the show. We were going to bring him back over there, so I'm hoping to also bring him over here.
Yeah, see if you can bring him over here.
Yeah,
I would totally like. I would love to be in the interview, but I will tell you, I'll probably just sit here and just be like,
he won't let
uh-huh.
you. No, he won't let you. Mark is he's like it's like almost like we were separated at birth in some weird ways, dude. Because he's like me. Like if like with Odd Daughter, we're sitting over there quiet, so I made her talk to us for a little bit. He's like that. If he sees you and you're not talking, he'll like, so what are you doing over there being quiet? Like he'll
I'm
call you out.
fangirling. Leave me alone.
He's a cool guy like that. Like you like him a lot. But even he does some Lovecraftian type stuff here and there.
Yeah.
But I mean, we guys, we can talk about Lovecraft for like literally. I can talk about him for days. So many aspects of his life. But it really means a lot.
The whole mythos is huge.
It meant a lot to me that you invited me on tonight. Like seriously, because I watch your show. I love your show. I absolutely. Your makeup still is probably the coolest makeup I've seen. And again, haunts for 29 years, and I would kill for makeup like that. Like the whole thing is so amazing. So to get here to sit near you while it's on talking about Lovecraft is you just made my whole like probably year at least. I have a good time.
Well, he was during my time. That's the reason I could tell you they were so judgy.
Nice.
Why do you think I'm dead?
Oh yeah. While we're waiting for her to come back, I did want to mention there was a big thing that we didn't talk about. Just take like a minute or two to talk about. The trophy for a very famous prize for the it was the World Fantasy Award trophy, was literally a trophy modeled after his face. And
Really?
oh yeah, for a long time until a while, not all that long ago, to be honest with you. I don't particularly like to say the N-word, but he did a poem in 1912 called "On the Creation of N-Word." I'll just say that because I don't feel comfortable with the word. But because of that, and again, that's a big part of the racism aspect of him. They decided that while he probably deserved to be the face for all of eternity of the award, that because of the communities and a lot of things that he stood for, or he was believed to stand for, they actually.
Why don't they just put like Cthulhu or something?
No one really understood, but it was in the wake of lobbying of authors, readers, and organizers that the trophy is now no longer modeled after him because of his controversial life. But it was that way for a very long time. I'm not going to talk about whether I agree or not on whether his face should be the trophy. I just wanted to mention that because it was a big deal, and it's a part of that separation we talk about from art and artist. A lot of people truly feel that to separate art from the person from the artist is a bad thing. And there's a big community of people that are forced the separation and that are against the separation. And the thing is, no side is right or wrong. It's a personal opinion and it's personal belief on how you feel, the world is for you. So I won't comment on that because that brings up politics and a lot of crazy stuff I don't get into. But that's how impactful he was to this world. That his face, his head, was the trophy for this, writing prize for a very, very long time.
Well, and I will say this much is that, and this isn't getting political, it's just kind of matter of fact.
Yeah.
But to me, the way I see things, if I cannot separate, and granted, there's some things like it's very hard to separate.
Yes.
But in order to, basically what I'm saying is if I cannot separate the person from the work, then I am denying myself whole lot of information. I am so nosy.
That's how I feel too, because I have a severe OCD, and one of my big triggers is knowledge, information. You guys know this, I'm always researching, I'm always reading, I'm always looking, watching, etc. I'm consuming everything I can consume. It drives me insane. But like, I'll show this right now. One of my tattoos. I've never really shown it before. I'm an enormous. There we go. It's upside down still. Harry Potter fan. Harry Potter. I mean, I found Harry Potter as an adult. As a grown-ass adult, because it was a little bit past my time, and I just didn't really pick it up until
I found it reading the books to my oldest.
Yeah, the second movie was already out before I decided, hey, let's go back and look at these. My friend owned them and kept saying how they weren't really for kids as they go along, and I was like, yeah, sure, it's about politics and all this stuff, but there's a kid on number. I don't believe you. And then I read them, and I struggle a lot because of what the trans community, what she said and done. Like I struggle a lot with like separating her from the world. That means a lot to me now for a lot of different reasons I won't get into, and it's hard.
Right.
Marilyn Manson was a part of my youth. I met the man. I cannot tell you how many times backstage at concert shows. I've done shows that were opening for him even. So that's another one that I have a lot of problems with. So there's these things and people that mean something to me that I have to come to terms with in my life, that these were maybe not great people, but the art that they did was so profound to me for different reasons, that it's a struggle with my
I like-
own
Well,
sensibility.
exactly. And to think 100 years from now, they're probably going to talk about us. I can't believe it. So it's just that's the reason
Right.
content. You know.
I just think people need to understand that people like us don't separate the art from the artist lightly. We don't do that like, oh, it
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
no, we
We struggle internally with it, but we understand at the end of the day that art enriches our life in some way, and we are choosing to keep the art a part of our lives because of the meaning behind it, not the person or their intent.
Right.
I think that Rowling in particular was a much better world builder than she was storyteller.
Agreed.
I good night. I like the fanfic generally a lot more than I like her stories because there were so many gaping holes that then were retconned rather poorly
I agree.
and stuff.
That's
But
a whole
I'm also yeah, we're done with that. I'm also glad that you had an issue showing your tattoo as well. Trying to figure out which way to go. I'm not the only one who's like,
oh,
look at my back of my arm. Wrong
I've
way.
been in front of cameras for most of my life, so you would think I'd have no problem. But every time there's a camera, I'm like, oh, where do I go?
Oh, so, and then I got like, oh, now I got my.
I'm used to having big marks on the ground, like X's on the ground that tells me where to stand and where to face. That's what I'm used to. So when I'm podcasting, I don't see those anywhere. But yeah.
All right. Did I miss a song? I had to
No.
run off.
I was talking. I brought up that while we were waiting for you because I need to hear this song. Like,
Yes, I want
I
to hear the
promised
song.
the song.
Oh yeah.
Oh God.
Oh Lord, are we ready? Hold on. Let me have a drink of that. I have to change this. Hold on.
No, you're not.
I'm wondering if
You're
it's a
on
song
water.
I know.
And we
If
practiced.
it is, I'm chiming in.
There's some tongue twisters,
I dread this moment.
Don't dread it.
and
Embrace
hopefully this won't get a shut off platform. So we'll see.
Copyright, maybe.
it. Embrace the unknown, odd daughter. Embrace the unknown.
All right. Are we ready?
Okay, got water.
Oh, for real?
You know,
Yeah.
H.P. Lovecraft
Alright.
had a fear of water.
That's the reason you choked on it.
I'm done.
All right, we ready? All right.
Dive it. Wait.
This goes out to everybody out there. TV.
It also the cover of paper.
You guys hear it? Hey there, Cthulhu, down there in your second city. It's a billion light years distant, and the stars look very pretty from relay. So close yet so far away. E-I-E-A. Cthulhu Patagon, or is that Cthulhu Patine? I can never quite remember, cause I'm not in my right mind. So I met you. No one corrupts the way you do. You know it's true. Oh, and what you'll do to me. Oh, and all humanity. Oh, you'll rise up from the sea. Oh, kill everyone slowly, except the ones like me.
That's where we stop. We don't get
We don't get copyright.
I actually do know that one because when that song "Hey There Delilah" came out by the Plain White T's, for some reason I liked that song when it came out, and then when I heard that for the first time, I about died. So I was over
I
here lip
love
syncing
that
along with
song.
you guys.
I wasn't sure if you were going to do that, one of your own, or pardon me, boy. Is this the road to Great Cthulhu? And
With her talking
it's
about
my love time.
listening to stuff from the HP Historical Society, I thought she might sing one of the Christmas songs because they actually have several Christmas albums where classic.
Oh yeah, I've heard those.
Those
I-
every Christmas. I hate Christmas. This is known about me. I cannot stand Christmas. So that's Christmas music I listen to every year since those first came out. And you can actually order the the books with all the sheet music, so you can go caroling door to door with them. It's amazing.
Oh, that would be fun.
I've written my own, actually. It's about Ithaquah, but it's how Ithaquah saved Christmas to the tune of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And
will you sing it for us at Christmas?
Yes, I will sing it for you at Christmas.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Or Krampus, probably.
Or Krampus.
But
yeah.
We can do a Lovecraftian Christmas this year, and I'll also grab the music for everybody so we can just like sing along to some Christmas carols. And
Well, see, and there's no reason why we can't have a Krampus and a Lovecraftian Christmas.
Yeah.
That way, since you don't like Christmas, we can completely change.
Yeah. I do. I like Krampus. I like Lovecraft, and there's also, the Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. There is a letter act that was.
Yeah.
It's called Yes, Virginia, there is a Great Cthulhu.
We can have Cthulhu.
I love that.
I wrote a play at one point in time. It's meant to be performed with sock puppets. It's called Yes, Charlie Brown, There Is a Great Cthulhu. It is very disturbing and terrible, and I performed it in text only in a role-playing group many years ago, and a friend of mine actually saved it, and to this day still has the file. So I might have to get her to pull that out for me.
I have a friend who I did a bunch of Cthulhu haiku, and I lost it years ago. And my one friend, he kept it, and he just he shows it off people. He's like, "Oh, I have this friend who wrote all these things," and yeah, so every now and then I'll contact him once every 5 years and be like, "I lost my copies again. Do you have my Cthulhu haiku handy?"
Since you are my personal filing cabinet.
Yes.
Yeah,
a couple of those.
That's awesome, though.
We're hitting 2 hours and 15. How long do you usually go?
Usually I go about an hour and a half at the very longest, but this has been fun. This has been a lot of fun. I'm so glad that you guys could join me tonight. And daughter, I'm so glad you could be a part of this. I had promised her anytime we talk about H.P. Lovecraft, she's got to be a part of it. So,
hell yeah.
I'm deeply upset.
She will be deeply upset.
I'd be upset if you weren't here, man. Like you're three of my favorite people in the world, so I'm always happy to spend some time with you guys.
But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me. Do we have any housekeeping we've got to do before we leave? Any announcements or anything?
Yeah,
everything back on.
I found out what's wrong with the pipes in the studio. They found animals, dead animals, and the main drain pipe. They pulled out 9 foxes.
What the
They've
fuck?
been doing this in the background. If you've seen me look off camera a lot, it's because I've watched them pull 9 foxes out of that drain. They said the drain's clear now, and we should be all right. There shouldn't be flooding or any issues. But 9 foxes. That's
what does the fox
don't
say?
say anything, do they?
I glug. I guess
Can
before when they
fox.
drowned.
Okay, were they trying to become a kitsune, or?
I mean, I don't know what it
Were they
is, but
big foxes,
Nine-tailed
little
fox?
foxes?
How
according
big
to
are those
Candy,
drains?
according to Candy, this is a point of concern. I'm telling them, yeah. So it's a point of concern, but because if you see 1 fox, it's usually a good thing. But if you see a grouping of more than 6 foxes, instead of meaning like creativity, cunning, and good luck, it's a super bad omen. So
It means that you're raising chickens with a shitty fence.
it means something. But yeah, 9 foxes they pulled out of that drain. So I don't know how they're stuffed in there because that's a tiny drain.
Can you? How are they going to dispose of? I feel bad for the foxes, but they have to.
Do they have no bones? Do they just
No,
slink in there like snakes?
I mean, I don't want to describe it because it's pretty.
Okay,
You had to sit there and
pretty
watch
bad.
it. Oh my
Yeah.
god!
You're just sitting there
I've
like.
been watching this going on because there's the drain. It's got that old double sink, that old like in a lot of old basements have. There's that double sink over there. It was a big floor drain that's on that side of the room. So like I was literally, I can see. I'm looking at the hole right now on the floor where they pulled it out of. I'm talking that it's like this. The opening's like this big.
Oh my god!
It's not a big opening to pull 9 foxes out of.
So, Mr. Garrett Martens IV, I will be taking your advice and not going there.
I'm telling you, you don't go anywhere without a partner.
Me or
Fair.
the host of this body are not going to be setting foot in Picked-Witch.
I mean, I'm
At
actually
least
staying
at
the
this
night
point.
overnight here in the building because I haven't had a chance to yet, and I'm weird like that. So if anything
Oh,
happens,
that's gotta
it'll be
smell good.
It's honestly, you'd be surprised. I think they've been down there for like so long now, like from the look of it, they weren't generating much of a
Okay.
smell
A ton
for,
of
like,
anything. Yeah.
because we didn't smell that when we came in here at all. I think we would have smelled that when we toured the building
True.
because they're not fresh.
Okay.
I mean, there was some weird smells, but I wouldn't say that it
Yeah.
was
Dead
Not
you
the
know,
fox.
P90
dead
cane
fox
boxes
smell.
in the pipe kind of a smell. But yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't have said, "Hey, they got dead foxes in these pipes." I'm telling you.
Specifically this number.
And Paul wanted me to mention that he's got another story coming out here in the next week, so we'll get to hear more about his haunt that he's got underneath the strip mall. And he
Okay.
also has assured me that they have located a small cell tower. So they found a much smaller one than they expected. I guess it's being donated. So
Oh wow. Okay.
yeah, I guess the word's already getting out about Pickwitch and our cell issues. So one of our listeners, not sure which one, apparently has donated a very
Wow.
small cell tower from their land. So they're gonna have a cell tower in
That's
town.
cool.
So that's good news.
And on Sunday, we're going to be interviewing Raz on it. We're doing this big old reverse thing on the
Mhm.
Clutch with his latest book review. I have James coming on as a co-host, and we'll have
Oh,
Raz
that's gonna be
under
fun.
And there's some
Yeah.
Lovecraftian stuff in that short story collection too. So
So so everybody come and see Raz on Sunday. I got to get the poster up. Somebody didn't give me the pictures until yesterday, so I'll have that up tonight after we get done with this.
but yeah.
And I think Steve's on this Monday too, right?
Yes, we got
I do
Steve
believe so.
Cat
Yes. Okay.
coming back on
And I
Monday.
think this. Oh, that's right. This is gonna be the autopsy of Jane Doe.
Yes, I'm excited about this
Oh
one.
God, I love that movie.
I-
That's one
gonna
of-
be-
That movie just broke me almost because that's one of my biggest fears. So I was like, oh
And if
my
you guys
God.
don't watch Steve the Cat, what the hell is wrong with you? Watch Steve the Cat. Dude, this show, the work put into
Seriously.
this show, man, it's unlike anything any of us do here. Like, period. It's
Mhm.
so unique. It's
It's
so
crazy
good.
cool.
Yeah, it's a movie review, but like, I don't care if you've seen one movie review show, you've seen them all. No, this one is the most unique one out there. Period.
There's
Well,
so
and
much
he makes
extra
everybody
storyline
up their
going
game.
on.
You know
He
what I'm
does.
saying?
Yeah.
He makes us better. He makes us look better.
Yeah. We like watching and go, oh shit, I just talked to people. Okay.
It's like all professional and stuff.
Yeah.
You
You
know,
do
with
productions
cause
and
stuff.
And
Wow.
we do assure you that D&D, PBC D&D is coming back the Monday after that. We've had some technical issues trying to move some things around, and we had
People
mentioned that
getting sick. It's just
Yeah.
it's been a lot. And then
we are moving it.
and then the Pickwitch thing. So
Yeah.
it's just we've had a lot going on.
It's been a little crazy, but we are bringing it back. And as we talked about in a previous show, some shows are going to be specific to certain platforms only going forward. And it looks like we are going to go with Twitch primarily for that show. So if you're not
Right.
up on our Twitch, man, you better find it. And also, you can always
Please.
interact with us on our Discord too.
please.
And you
please,
can't
please,
sit
please
with
hook
us.
up
I think
on
this
Twitch.
last. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was saying, please, please, please follow us. You don't even need to subscribe or anything. I mean, we'd love it if you would, but follow us on Twitch because once we get up to 50 followers, we can do more things. We get to do. We have access to give you guys more control over interacting with the show, and it's just you just need to have a couple 50 followers, and we're in the 40s, guys.
Yeah. There's
So
some
we can just get
you gotta follow to become affiliates to have more options for you guys. Yeah.
yeah, that allows us. You can get points and things, and then you can spend them on doing things for the show, which we'll tell you about.
And Paul's
Seriously.
story about his haunt is only going to be in YouTube, starting with this next episode. So we're really branching out. We're getting away from just Facebook, because all our eggs are in a basket. We're trying to, move things around a lot right now and to engage with you guys on other platforms that you love, because these are platforms that you guys have loved, that you've been talking to us about and saying, hey, we'd like to see you do more over here or over there. So this is us giving you what you asked for.
Exactly. And I think you can't sit with us, because, like I said, there's been some, I'm talking about some awful cootie stuff going around, because I had it week before last, and Akia and Hexus had it this week. Just bad stuff. But you can't sit with us. We'll be on this coming up Thursday, I do believe. And this last one, the Jonestown tape, that will be the last one that will be in a video version live.
Yep.
And that's going to be over in on Twitch, the tape, the death tape, and then we'll be going completely audio for the live version or the regular version, and then I think he's going to be doing the video version a week later on YouTube, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. That's what I believe. Yep, that's what I remember hearing. Yep. So yeah, lots of platforms. You guys asked for it. We're delivering because that's what we do.
Yep,
when you guys want something, you tell us and we do it.
Okay.
So
What's going on Friday? That Jenny's bringing up.
My brain is dead. I'm in Pickwick.
Jenny, what's going on Friday?
I'm sure it's extremely important, but my brain is that gone right now.
Just
And
static.
while we're working on another Owlite show, we're just going ahead with
yeah. The book comes out Friday, and we're gonna do the show all about it on Sunday. Yeah. Thank you. That's what we're talking about.
Oh, okay. I was like, what have we forgotten?
Riverside Chronicle, collection of short stories from Riverside, Ohio.
And we're still working. We're doing more of the Unwrapped stuff right now on the Owlite because we're trying to come up with another show. And I just got a lot of shit to unwrap, and so
I still need to get my book. I won. I was sick that week.
I sent you the code. You just need to click on it, and it'll take you there, and you accept it. I've been wondering because there's a couple of people. Raz, I don't think you got yours yet either.
Oh, the most
recent.
I
was sleeping that whole week.
Okay,
plus I never win anything. I was so excited.
Well, what's happening next Sunday? We're gonna have 6 people unwrapping comic boxes that have between like 10 to 14 comics per box in them, all through John Kreisa, that person who did before, and they all have original artwork and stuff that he did as well. So it's going to be a huge
Can I give
one.
a little sneak peek real quick because I have a piece of artwork right next to me?
Sure. And I also have.
I have the Cyclops that he did. Look at this. Because I have I managed to get it off the package.
That's off the package, right? Okay, so the pieces
the outside of the package.
The pieces that he puts on the outside of the package are the pieces of artwork that he doesn't consider to be good enough to try to sell. So he just cuts them out and puts them on the boxes.
I've got a Magneto and a Black Panther on the outside of that box too that I've already got attached to my desk because I'm taking all the outside package and all the artwork he sends me, and I'm covering this brand new desk that I got entirely in his artwork.
I'm using comic backboards and trying to get them to fit the ones that do on those, and like boarding and bagging them, and he's just like, this is just my crappy artwork. I'm like,
yeah, dude's amazing.
Please, yeah. And
before you throw it away, just send it to me.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. If you're gonna throw it out, but he also
I can make wallpaper out of it, like really cool wallpaper.
It's about covering my whole desk and getting some polyurethane to coat over it, so like it's permanently in my desk now. That's what I'm thinking about doing right now.
Oh, that would be cool though.
He does some really great stuff. I'm glad it was a total accident that we hooked up with him too, because I just wanted some personal comics for myself, and I put it on to Jar Jar Jeremy's from Dorkening, his Comic Book Lovers Buy Sell It to Trade auction house or something like that on Facebook. It's a really, really, really long name because all of the short ones were taken. And he's got like 20,000 members on this Facebook page. And I was just like, hey, I'm just looking for some Ghost Rider. I wanted to do the Rise of the Midnight Suns. And then I also, like there was some Sandman stuff tied up in there too. And I'd like to get these.
Yep.
And within 5 minutes of posting it, John hops on. He's like, the one specific one I wanted was the Ghost Rider 15 glow in the dark cover that Tex did. And because it was the holy grail of comics when I was a kid and started collecting. It was, like a couple $100 because the only one they had was rated.
Yeah.
And he's like, so I just got this in today and it's a newsstand copy of it and blah, blah, blah. And I do mystery box for them. So these other people are like, oh, I can try to find one for you. I'm like, oh, already done. John's going to hook me up. And then he sent me this box when he opened it. And it's just turned into like, I'm in love with you. Can we do some more stuff together? And then I've been introducing him to all these other people. And we've all just like,
oh, yeah. So that Sunday and our newer show, Owlite Unwrapped, is going to have people from here in Owlite, people from the Dorkening, and also Jenny over here. Friday Blue in the comments is going to be joining us for that one.
And as well as Tom Morse from over on Brill Pro.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Come and join us too. We're having people from everywhere, and then we're working on some stuff. If you guys want to tell us what you think, one of the other show ideas we have is just kind of basically us squirreling out.
Yeah, it's a squirrel.
Yeah, have some time
Go
where
over
we
to
sit
the
and talk about-
Discord, guys, and be a part of the conversation. That is the best place to let us know.
It is.
Discord.
Discord.
Love Discord.
Discord is
I-
like
Yes. We took a lot of time to build that Discord, and I'm not wearing my use my but but I do have, I gotta show, God, where is it? I had it out because I was showing them the stickers that I got. Okay, you have to cover your eyes here, Piper. This goes double for Discord. I have t-shirts made with this. I have stickers. I can give you a coffee mug. Anyway,
But yeah,
right,
so
that's-
summing up, lots of cool
show
shit.
your drawing. Show your drawing and your T-shirt.
oh yeah, you can.
You guys need to go buy her stuff.
It's on the it is on my main page now. This is, you can't see it that well because I have boobs and stuff.
And the views
and
just
hair.
went up.
But
just
I
because
have-
the word boobs was said, we just got another 100,000 followers.
yeah, but I do have a sticker version of it that's a little bit easier to see. These are just little things that I did when I was in high school and a little bit after that. And so I drew these little skeleton guys, and I'm going to be adding more and more of those. And then we also will be coming out with an Owlite brand page that'll be separate from my own, but currently these are all just things on my own page that I've been making t-shirts that I've always been like, I really wanted one of these. Nobody ever made it, so I will.
We even got
I will just make it myself.
we're
Yes.
even making a camp t-shirt, like 2 different versions of a camping t-shirt for
Yes.
our, like,
Yes.
for the storytelling stuff that we do. So a lot of cool stuff.
Yep.
But yeah, lots of cool shit on the way for PBDC Collective. Tons of shit every week. You guys know what we do. Like, we come here, we do a lot of awesome stuff. You know, on our Manocasters.
We
Well,
cover a
that's-
lot of stuff. We really do.
But again, thank you guys
Yeah.
for having me so much. I love you guys so much. And like, this was just such an awesome show. I needed that. I really needed that after the last couple of weeks we've all had of kind of not being able to podcast as much as we usually do. And we've all been sick or one thing or another. So it's great
Yeah.
to come back and do something like this together.
I'm so happy
This
to
was
be
a
on
lot.
your show too. Yeah, this is fun. I
Well,
never
I've
get
been
to be on
meaning to
with
get
you,
you
really.
guys on, and I just thought, well, this will be the perfect one. This will be the absolutely perfect one.
I agree. I agree.
Oh, my water's gone.
Well,
Oh,
guys, thank you so much for joining me. My stuff's about to go dead. So I guess this is the time that we're going to wish everybody pleasant nightmares, guys.
Suck it.
Now, let me find the right one. Hold on.
Button.
What's the eye?
The red shiny candy like button.
Bye, guys.
And Stimpy, hold out.
And now, folks, it's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.